Before the entire clan, Kaelyn Rourke knelt in the frozen dirt. Not for crimes committed, but for power absent. At 18, during the sacred bonding rite, her wolf never came. Silence shattered her world. Her destined mate, Alpha heir Darius Velkar, spoke 3 words that erased her existence. You are nothing. Stripped of name, status, and protection, she was exiled beyond the Iron Ridge where the weak don't survive. But what they cast out wasn't weakness. It was something they couldn't comprehend, something that would return to burn their world down. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. The ceremonial hall stank of pine smoke and old blood. Kaelyn Rourke stood in the center of the stone circle, her bare feet numb against the frozen ground, her breath coming out in short white clouds that disappeared into the vaulted darkness above. 200 wolves surrounded her, pack members, elders, warriors, all waiting for the moment that would define the rest of her life. The bonding rite. 18 years she'd waited for this. 18 years of training, of preparation, of being told she was born into one of the most powerful bloodlines in the Northern Territories. The Rourke name carried weight. Her father had been a council member before the fever took him. Her mother's line traced back to the original pack founders. She should have been golden. She should have been untouchable. Begin the summoning. Elder Garrett's voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. Kaelyn closed her eyes. She could feel the ancient magic thrumming through the stone beneath her, could sense the collective energy of every wolf present, pressing against her skin like a physical thing. This was it. The moment her wolf would emerge, would bond with her consciousness, would make her whole. She reached inward, the way she'd been taught since childhood, deeper, deeper, into that primal space where instinct lived, where the beast slept, waiting to be awakened. Come on, she thought. I'm ready. I've always been ready. Nothing. She pushed harder, her fingernails digging into her palms hard enough to draw blood. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cold. Around her she could hear the shifting of feet, the uncomfortable clearing of throats. Kaelyn Rourke, Elder Garrett said, and there was something in his tone now, something that made her stomach clench. Call to your wolf. I am, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Louder. The wolf responds to strength. I'm trying. The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with the first taste of panic. She could feel them all watching her, 200 pairs of eyes boring into her skin. She could hear the whispers starting, low and insidious, spreading through the crowd like poison. Nothing's happening. She can't find it. Maybe there's nothing to find. No, that wasn't possible. Every wolf-blooded person developed their wolf by 18. It was biology. It was destiny. It was enough. The single word cut through the murmuring like a blade. Kaelyn's eyes snapped open. Darius Velkar stood at the edge of the circle, and even now, even in this moment of her private humiliation, her traitorous heart stuttered at the sight of him. He was everything an alpha heir should be. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes like cold steel. At 22, he'd already led successful hunts into rival territory, had already proven himself in combat against challengers twice his age, and he was hers, or supposed to be. The mate bond had snapped into place 6 months ago, that invisible thread connecting their souls, marking them as destined partners. She'd felt it like a lightning strike, sudden, overwhelming, impossible to deny. He'd felt it too. She knew he had, even though he'd never spoken of it directly. Now he looked at her like she was a stranger. Darius? She started. Step forward, he said, his voice flat, emotionless. She did, her legs shaking. When she reached him, she could smell his scent, pine and smoke, and something uniquely him that made her wolf. Except she didn't have a wolf. The realization hit her like a fist to the gut. The mate bond, she said quietly, desperately. You feel it. I know you do. Something flickered in his eyes. For just a second, she thought she saw doubt, maybe even regret. But then his expression hardened into something cold and immovable. I feel nothing, he said. The lie was so blatant, so cruel that for a moment she couldn't breathe. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? He turned to face the assembled pack, his voice rising to carry through the chamber. I, Darius Velkar, Alpha heir of the Iron Ridge Pack, formally reject the mate bond with Kaelyn Rourke. The world tilted. No, she breathed. No, you can't. I reject you, he continued, each word precise and devastating, on the grounds that you are wolfless, incomplete, unworthy to stand beside an alpha. The pain that lanced through her chest wasn't metaphorical. The mate bond, that invisible thread connecting them, began to fray, to tear, to shred apart. It felt like someone had reached into her ribcage and started pulling out her organs one by one. She collapsed to her knees, a scream tearing from her throat. Accept the rejection, Elder Garrett said from somewhere above her. It's the only way to end the pain. But she couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but kneel there in the dirt while agony radiated through every nerve ending. Kaelyn, Darius's voice was closer now, quieter. Accept it. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She looked up at him through tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Why? You know why. Tell me anyway. The words came out broken, jagged. You owe me that much. His jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, because you're weak. Because a leader needs a partner who can stand in the storm, not someone who will shatter at the first sign of adversity. You have no wolf, Kaelyn. That makes you human. And humans don't survive in our world. I'm not weak, she said, but even to her own ears the protest sounded hollow. Aren't you? He gestured around the chamber. Look at yourself, kneeling in the dirt, crying, begging. That's not strength, that's pathetic. The cruelty in his voice, the absolute finality of it, broke something inside her. Kaelyn Rourke, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Accept your rejection. The mate bond shattered. It didn't fade or dissolve. It exploded, sending shards of phantom pain through her chest so intense she thought she might actually die right there on the stone floor. She heard someone screaming and realized dimly that it was her. When the pain finally subsided to something merely excruciating, she found herself on her hands and knees gasping for breath, her entire body shaking. Strip her of pack rights, Elder Garrett said, and there was no warmth in his tone now, no grandfatherly kindness he'd shown her as a child. Effective immediately, Kaelyn Rourke is no longer recognized as a member of the Iron Ridge Pack. Wait! Her mother's voice, sharp and desperate, cut through the proceedings. Lyra Rourke pushed through the crowd, her face pale. Elder, please, she's still my daughter. She still carries Rourke blood. Silence. Elder Garrett's command was absolute. You know the law, Lyra. A wolfless individual cannot remain within pack territory. It's been this way for 1,000 years. She's 18 years old, and old enough to face the consequences of her deficiency. Kaelyn tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She could feel the magic of the pack bond, the thing that connected every member to the collective, that provided protection and strength and belonging, beginning to withdraw. It was like watching her own lifeblood drain away. Please, she said, hating herself for begging but unable to stop. I can still contribute. I'm trained. I'm educated. You can do nothing, Darius said flatly. You're a liability, a weakness. Every moment you remain here, you endanger the pack. That's not true, isn't it? He crouched down beside her, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. What happens when another pack attacks? When you can't shift, can't fight, can't defend yourself? You become a target, a distraction, something the rest of us have to protect while we're trying to survive. You're dead weight, Kaelyn, and I won't tie an anchor around my pack's neck just because we used to fuck. The vulgarity of it, the casual dismissal of everything they'd shared, hit her like a slap. We were more than that, she said. No, he said, standing. We weren't. Elder Garrett's voice rang out again. By the authority vested in me as head of the council, I hereby decree that Kaelyn Rourke be exiled beyond the Iron Ridge, to the unclaimed territories where no pack law applies. She is forbidden from returning on pain of death. She will be granted 1 day's provisions and nothing more. The sentence is to be carried out immediately. No! Her mother's scream echoed through the chamber. You can't send her out there alone. She'll die. Then she dies, Darius said, and turned away. Kaelyn tried to speak, to protest, to do anything, but rough hands were already grabbing her arms, hauling her to her feet. She recognized one of them, Marcus, who'd taught her hand-to-hand combat when she was 12. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Marcus, please." "I'm sorry, kid," he said quietly. Orders are orders. They dragged her from the ceremonial hall through the compound she'd grown up in, past the training grounds where she'd spent countless hours preparing for a future that would never come. People stepped out of their houses to watch, some with pity in their eyes, others with cold satisfaction. "Finally getting rid of the dead weight," someone muttered. "About time they dealt with the Rourke girl. My daughter's been saying for months she was defective." Kaelyn stopped trying to fight. What was the point? They were right. She was defective, broken, wrong. They took her to the northern gate, the one that opened onto the wild frontier beyond Pack territory. Beyond the Iron Ridge, where the land turned savage and unforgiving, where creatures that weren't quite wolf and not quite human hunted in the darkness. "You're making a mistake," her mother said, appearing suddenly beside the guards. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands shaking as she pressed a small pack into Kaelyn's arms. "Take this. There's food, water, a knife." "Lyra, step back," one of the guards said. "She's my daughter." "She's nobody," the guard replied. "She has no name, no pack, no protection under our laws. Whatever happens to her out there is no longer our concern." Lyra ignored him, gripping Kaelyn's shoulders hard enough to bruise. "Listen to me. Go south, away from the ridge. There are human settlements 3 days' walk if you push hard. They'll take you in. You can have a life there." "A human life," Kaelyn said numbly. "A life, that's more than you'll have if you stay in the wild." Lyra's voice broke. "Please, baby, promise me you'll try." Kaelyn looked into her mother's eyes and saw the desperation there, the grief, the guilt. And beneath it all, a question her mother was too afraid to ask aloud. "What did I do wrong?" "I promise," Kaelyn lied. They opened the gate. The world beyond was dark and endless, a vast expanse of snow-covered forest that stretched to the horizon. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of ice and pine and something else, something wild and dangerous that made every instinct scream at her to run back inside, back to safety, back to the only home she'd ever known. "Go," the guard said. Kaelyn took a step forward, then another, then another. Behind her, the gate slammed shut with a finality that echoed in her bones. She was alone. Datoshi. The first night, she cried. She found a hollow beneath an old oak tree, crawled inside, and wept until there were no tears left. Her chest ached where the mate bond had torn apart. Her hands were numb from cold. Every sound in the forest made her flinch, convinced something was coming to kill her. Nothing came. Maybe that was worse. The second day, she walked south like her mother had told her, the pack heavy on her shoulders, her feet blistering in boots that hadn't been designed for long-distance travel. The landscape was brutal, all sharp rocks and steep inclines and patches of ice hidden under innocent-looking snow. She fell twice, the second time badly enough that she lay there for 10 minutes, tasting blood in her mouth, wondering if it would be easier to just stay down. But something in her refused to quit. Some stubborn, angry part of her that wasn't ready to die in the dirt just because Darius Velkar had decided she wasn't worth keeping. She got up. The third day, her provisions ran out. She'd been rationing carefully, but the cold burned through calories faster than she'd anticipated. By midday, her stomach was cramping with hunger. By evening, she was lightheaded and shaking. She tried to hunt, set a snare the way Marcus had taught her years ago, but whatever lived in these woods was either too smart or too scarce. The snare sat empty all night. On the fourth day, she caught a rabbit. It was scrawny and half-starved, but it was food. Her hand shook as she skinned it with her mother's knife, her stomach churning at the smell of blood and raw meat. She'd seen animals butchered before, had even helped in the pack kitchens as a child, but doing it herself, knowing that her survival depended on this one small corpse, was different. She built a fire using techniques she'd learned in survival training, cooked the meat until it was charred and tough, and ate it anyway. It was the best meal of her life. That night, huddled beside the dying embers of her fire, she felt something shift inside her. Not her wolf. She'd accepted by now that the wolf was never coming. But something else. A tiny spark of defiance that whispered, "You're still alive. They said you'd die and you're still alive." The fifth day, she stopped walking south. She didn't make the decision consciously. Her feet simply stopped carrying her in that direction. Because the truth was, she didn't want a human life. Didn't want to spend the next 60 years pretending she'd never known the magic of pack bonds and full moons and the wild power that lived in her blood, even if her wolf didn't. If she was going to die out here, she'd die on her own terms. She turned west, toward the deeper wild. Back. A week passed. Then 2. Kaelyn learned the rhythms of the forest, learned which plants were edible and which would make her violently ill. Learned to read tracks in the snow, to predict weather by the way the birds flew, to find shelter before nightfall. She learned to be alone with her thoughts, and that was harder than any physical challenge, because in the silence, the voices came. You are nothing. Darius's words on repeat, a mantra of worthlessness that played every time she closed her eyes. Dead weight. Defective. Weak. There were moments, dark, desperate moments in the deepest part of the night, when she believed them. When she looked at her shaking hands and thought maybe they were right. Maybe she was broken. Maybe she deserved this. But then morning would come and she'd still be breathing, and the stubborn part of her would whisper, one more day. You can survive one more day. So she did. 3 weeks in, she found the cave. It was set into the side of a rocky cliff face, hidden behind a curtain of frozen vines. She almost missed it entirely, but something, some instinct she couldn't name, drew her toward it. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through, but once inside, the space opened up into a chamber about the size of her old bedroom back home. It was dry, protected from the wind. There were even natural vents in the stone that drew smoke upward when she built a fire. It was perfect. She set up camp, arranging her meager possessions with the care of someone building a home rather than a temporary shelter. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, she'd stopped thinking of this as temporary. She wasn't going back to the pack, wasn't going to human settlements. This was her life now. That night, sitting by the fire, she felt it for the first time. A pulse of energy beneath her skin, so subtle she almost missed it, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite in sync with her own. She froze, her breath catching. Was this? No. She'd accepted the truth. She had no wolf. This was something else. She closed her eyes, focusing on that strange sensation. It didn't feel like the description she'd heard of wolf consciousness, that aggressive, primal presence pressing against the mind. This was quieter, deeper, like an ocean current moving far below the surface. She reached for it tentatively, the way you might reach for a wild animal that could bolt at any moment. The energy pulsed again, stronger this time. What are you? She thought. No answer, just that steady, patient thrumming beneath her skin. She sat with it for hours, exploring the sensation, trying to understand its contours. It didn't push or demand or rage. It simply existed, waiting for something she couldn't quite grasp. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of standing in an endless void, with something vast and ancient watching her from the darkness. Eek. A month in the wild changed her body. The softness of pack life melted away, replaced by lean muscle and calloused hands. Her senses sharpened, not to wolf levels, but beyond what they'd been before. She could hear the difference between wind through pine and wind through oak. Could smell rain coming hours before the first drops fell. Survival became second nature, but it was the thing beneath her skin that consumed her thoughts. Every day she practiced reaching for it. Every day it responded a little more readily. The energy would rise at her call, would flow through her limbs like warm honey, would make her feel strong and alive and powerful in ways that had nothing to do with shifting. She started testing it. First, small things. Convincing a deer to walk closer. Sensing the location of fish beneath river ice. Finding paths through the forest that seemed to open up before her, as if the trees themselves were making way. Then, larger things. One afternoon, a mountain cat cornered her near a stream. It was massive, easily 200 pounds of muscle and teeth and predatory intent. Without a wolf, she had no chance in a straight fight. But she didn't fight. She met the cat's eyes and pushed. The energy surged out of her in a wave, and the cat, this apex predator that should have torn her apart, froze. Its pupils dilated, its muscles went slack. She could feel its consciousness, simple and direct, driven by hunger and territory and instinct. Leave, she commanded, not with her voice, but with something deeper. The cat turned and walked away. Kaelyn stood there shaking for 10 minutes afterward, her mind reeling. Because that wasn't normal. That wasn't wolf magic or pack bonds or anything she'd ever been taught existed. What the hell am I? She had no answer. That night she sat by her fire and took stock. 6 weeks she'd been in the wild. 6 weeks of survival, of solitude, of discovering this strange power that lived inside her. 6 weeks of proving to herself that she was stronger than they'd believed. But 6 weeks was also long enough for the anger to build. She thought about Darius's face when he'd rejected her, the cold certainty in his eyes, the way he'd called her weak, pathetic, dead weight. She thought about Elder Garrett's decree, the casual way he'd sentenced her to death, as if her 18 years of life meant nothing. She thought about the pack, 200 wolves who'd watched her exile without a single voice raised in protest. And she thought about her mother, who'd begged her to run south, to save herself, to accept a lesser life because the pack's laws were more important than her daughter's survival. The anger crystallized into something cold and sharp and utterly clear. They were wrong about her, all of them, and she was going to make sure they knew it. Tess. 2 months in, a blizzard hit. It came on fast. One moment the sky was clear, the next the world was a whiteout of driving snow and howling wind. Kaelyn barely made it back to her cave before visibility dropped to 0. She huddled by her fire, feeding it carefully to make her wood stores last, and waited out the storm. It raged for 3 days. On the 4th day, the silence woke her. She emerged from her cave to find the world transformed. Snow lay thick and pristine, covering everything in a blanket of white that reflected the sun with blinding intensity. The forest was utterly still, no wind, no bird calls, nothing. That's when she saw the tracks. They led from the tree line toward her cave, massive prints, far too large to be a natural wolf. The stride was wrong too, uneven and dragging, as if whatever made them was injured. Kaelyn's hand went to the knife at her belt. The tracks led around the side of the cliff face, disappearing into a cluster of boulders about 50 yards from her cave entrance. She followed them slowly, every sense alert, the strange power beneath her skin rising unbidden. She found him wedged between 2 rocks, barely conscious and slowly freezing to death. He was a wolf, or had been. Now he was caught mid-shift, his body a grotesque hybrid of human and animal, his breathing labored and wet-sounding. Blood had frozen in dark patches across his fur. She should have walked away, should have let nature take its course, but she didn't. "Hey," she said softly, approaching with her hands visible. "Can you understand me?" One yellow eye cracked open, focused on her with obvious effort. "Human?" The word came out garbled, forced through a mouth not shaped for speech. "Close enough," she said. Recognition flickered in that eye, then confusion. "You smell like pack." "Used to be pack," she corrected. "Now I'm nothing, but I can help you if you let me." "Why?" The suspicion in his voice was clear even through the pain. Good question. Why was she helping? Because she knew what it felt like to be left to die. Because some part of her still believed in pack values like loyalty and protection, even though the pack had shown her none? Or because she was desperately, pathetically lonely? "Does it matter?" she asked instead. The wolf studied her for a long moment, then, "Can't, shift back, stuck." That explained the hybrid form. Something had interrupted his transformation, left him caught between states. It happened sometimes, usually from severe trauma or blood loss. Without help, he'd stay like this until he died. "I might be able to fix that," she said, with more confidence than she felt. She knelt beside him, placing her hands on his malformed shoulder. The strange power rose at her call, flowing through her palms into his body. She could feel the magic there, tangled and knotted, trying to complete a transformation it didn't have the strength to finish. Gently, carefully, she began to untangle it. It took hours. By the time she finished, the sun was setting and she was shaking with exhaustion. But the wolf had managed to shift fully human. A man in his 30s with dark skin and graying hair, still bleeding from a dozen wounds, but at least in a form she could treat. She got him back to her cave, bound his injuries with strips torn from her spare clothes, and kept him alive through the night. When he woke the next morning, his first words were, "You're not human." "No," she agreed, "but you're not wolf either." No, she said again. Then what are you? Kaelyn looked at him, the stranger she'd saved for reasons she couldn't fully explain, and realized she had no answer. I don't know, she said finally, but I'm going to find out. His name was Marcus, different Marcus from the guard who'd exiled her, but the coincidence still made her laugh bitterly. He was from a pack 3 territories east, had been traveling through when he'd been ambushed by rogues. They left you for dead, Kaelyn said, checking his bandages. They thought they had, Marcus replied. Guess they underestimated my stubbornness. I know the feeling. He stayed for 2 weeks while his wounds healed, and in that time, Kaelyn learned more about the wider world than she'd known in 18 years of pack life. Marcus had traveled extensively, had seen dozens of territories, had witnessed power structures rise and fall. Your pack, he said one evening. Iron Ridge, you said? Used to be mine. Not anymore. I've heard stories about them. Strong alpha, tight hierarchy, very traditional. He paused. They're the ones who exiled you. They decided I wasn't worth keeping. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, their loss. You don't know that. You don't know what I can or can't do. I know you saved my life when you could have left me to die. I know you survived 2 months alone in the wild with no wolf and no training for this. I know whatever power you used to fix my shift wasn't anything I've ever encountered before. He met her eyes. That's enough for me to know they fucked up. Something in Kaelyn's chest loosened at those words. When Marcus finally left, recovered enough to travel, he made her an offer. Come with me. My pack would welcome you. I have no wolf, she reminded him. You have something better, something unique. Alpha Cyrus values strength in all its forms. It was tempting, God, it was tempting, to have a pack again, to belong somewhere, to not be alone. But she couldn't do it. I appreciate the offer, she said, but I'm not ready. Ready for what? She looked back toward the direction of Iron Ridge, hidden beyond the horizon. To go back and show them exactly how wrong they were. Marcus studied her face, then nodded slowly. When you do, I want to hear about it, preferably from you and not from the corpses. I'll try not to leave too many of those. Liar, he said, but he was smiling. After he left, the cave felt emptier than before. Kaelyn sat by her fire and forced herself to confront the truth. She was stalling. She had power now, strange, undefinable power that was growing stronger every day. She had survival skills. She had anger and motivation and every reason to march back to Iron Ridge and make Darius Velkar regret every word he'd ever spoken to her. So why was she still here? Because she was afraid. Not of them. Of herself. Of what she might do if she went back before she fully understood what she'd become. That night she dreamed of the void again, but this time the vast presence in the darkness spoke. You are ready, it said in a voice like grinding glaciers. She woke with tears on her face and knew it was true. It was time to go home. 3 months to the day after her exile, Kaelyn Rourke began the journey back to Iron Ridge. She traveled light, just her knife, a water skin, and the clothes on her back. Everything else she left behind in the cave. If this went badly, she wouldn't need provisions for a return trip. The walk took 4 days. She could have done it in 3 if she'd pushed, but she wanted time to think, to plan, to prepare for whatever waited at the end of the road. What did she want? Revenge? Justice? Recognition? All of it. None of it. She wanted them to see her, really see her, not as the broken girl they'd discarded, but as what she'd become in the aftermath of their cruelty. On the evening of the 4th day, she crested a ridge and saw it. Iron Ridge Pack territory, sprawled across the valley below like a living thing. She could see the compound buildings, the training grounds, the ceremonial hall where her entire life had shattered. Smoke rose from cooking fires. People moved between structures like ants in a colony. From this distance, it looked peaceful, organized, strong. She let the power rise, felt it flood her system like liquid lightning. The air around her seemed to thicken, to press outward, responding to her will. She'd learned control in the wild, learned to shape this force, to direct it with precision rather than letting it flow wild and unguided. Now she was going to show them what they'd thrown away. Kaelyn started down the ridge, and with each step, the world seemed to shift. Animals scattered from her path. Trees bent slightly as she passed. The very air hummed with the force of her presence. By the time she reached the northern gate, the same gate they'd thrown her through 3 months ago, there was a crowd waiting. They must have sensed her coming, must have felt the disturbance she was creating in the natural order. The gate stood open. Kaelyn walked through without hesitation. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship's prow. She recognized faces, people she'd grown up with, trained with, laughed with. Now they stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to fear to something that might have been awe. No one spoke. No one moved to stop her. She walked through the compound, her boots crunching on gravel, heading directly for the center of the territory where she knew she'd find him. The council hall loomed ahead, its massive doors standing open. Inside, she could sense them gathering, the elders, the warriors, and him, Darius. She could feel him the way you feel a storm coming, that electric charge in the air, that pressure that makes your teeth ache. The mate bond was gone, shattered beyond repair, but she could still sense him, not through magic, but through 3 months of focused rage that had crystallized into diamond-hard purpose. Kaelyn stepped into the hall. Every conversation died. 200 wolves turned to stare at her, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, she was 18 again, kneeling in the dirt, powerless and broken. Then the moment passed. She wasn't that girl anymore. "Hello, Darius," she said, her voice carrying through the absolute silence. "We need to talk." At the far end of the hall, standing beside the Alpha's throne, Darius Velkar went very, very still. Their eyes met across the distance, and something in the air between them ignited. This was going to get bloody. Darius didn't move. For 5 long seconds, he stood there beside his father's throne. His throne now, Kaelyn realized, noting the ceremonial markings on his shoulders, and simply stared at her like she was a ghost materialized from his worst nightmare. Good. Let him wonder. Let him question. Let him feel even a fraction of the confusion and terror she'd felt that night 3 months ago. "Kaelyn." Her name left his lips carefully, as if testing whether she was real. "You're alive." Disappointed? Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. Surprised. The wild doesn't usually give back what it takes. "Maybe it didn't take me." She walked further into the hall, her boots echoing against stone. "Maybe it made me." The crowd shifted uneasily. She could feel their anxiety like static electricity, could sense the way they watched her with eyes that couldn't quite focus, as if looking at her directly caused some kind of instinctive discomfort. Elder Garrett stepped forward from his position near the throne. He looked older than she remembered, more bent, more fragile. "This is forbidden. You were exiled. Your presence here is..." "Is what?" Kaelyn turned to face him fully. "Illegal? Punishable by death?" She spread her arms wide. "Then punish me, Elder. Call your warriors. Enforce your law." Nobody moved. Garrett's jaw worked soundlessly. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he was trying to reconcile what she'd been with what stood before him now. "You have no right to be here," he said finally, but there was no conviction in it. "I have every right. I was born here, raised here. This was my home long before you decided it wasn't." She took another step forward. "Or does exile erase 18 years of existence? Does walking through that gate unmake my childhood? You know the law. I know you hide behind laws when you lack the courage to make real decisions." The words came out sharp enough to draw blood. "You sentenced an 18-year-old girl to death because she didn't fit your definition of acceptable. Don't talk to me about rights, old man. You forfeited yours when you chose cruelty over compassion." Garrett's face flushed dark red. "How dare you, bum?" "Enough!" Darius's voice cut through the exchange like a blade. He descended from the platform, each movement controlled and deliberate. "Elder Garrett, step back." "But Alpha." "I said step back." Garrett retreated, though the resentment on his face was clear. Darius approached until only 10 feet separated them, close enough that Kaelyn could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands flexed at his sides, close enough that she could smell him, still pine and smoke, still uniquely him, and goddamn her traitorous body for remembering what those scents meant. "You look different," he said quietly. 3 months in hell will do that." "I meant you look stronger, harder." His eyes tracked over her face, her shoulders, her stance. "You survived." Don't sound so shocked. I'm not the fragile thing you convinced yourself I was. I never thought you were fragile. Liar. The word cracked between them. You called me weak, pathetic, dead weight. Those were your exact words, Darius, or have you rewritten history in your head already? His jaw tightened. I said what needed to be said. For who? For the pack? For your position? She took a step closer, watched his pupils dilate slightly. Or for yourself? Because keeping me meant facing the fact that your precious hierarchy doesn't account for everything. This isn't about hierarchy. Everything with you is about hierarchy, about who stands where, who deserves what, who gets to stay, and who gets thrown away like garbage. You had no wolf. The words exploded out of him with enough force that several pack members flinched. You stood in that circle for 30 minutes and nothing answered. Nothing. Do you have any idea what that meant? What it would have cost the pack to keep you here? Enlighten me. It would have made us weak. Made us a target. Every rival pack within 100 miles would have seen it as vulnerability, would have tested our borders, would have pushed until we broke. He was breathing hard now, his control starting to crack. I had a responsibility. To me! Kaelyn's shout matched his in volume, in fury. I was your mate, Darius. That bond didn't care about pack politics or power structures or what the fucking neighbors thought. It chose me. It chose us. And you ripped it apart because you were too much of a coward to stand against tradition. I did what I had to do. You did what was easy. The silence that followed was suffocating. Darius stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Anger and regret and something else twisted together so tightly they'd become one thing. When he spoke again, his voice was low and dangerous. You want to know what was easy? Walking away would have been easy. Taking you with me? Leaving this pack behind, starting over somewhere they'd never heard of Iron Ridge or Velcar or any of it, that would have been easy. He took a step forward, closing the distance between them to something that felt combustible. What I did was hard. It was the hardest fucking thing I've ever done, but it was right. Right for who? For everyone who depends on this pack to survive. For the children who need protection. For the elders who've given their entire lives to building something that lasts. Another step. For you. Kaelyn laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Don't you dare try to make yourself the hero of this story. You didn't exile me for my own good. You did it to preserve your precious reputation. You would have died here. His voice dropped to something almost gentle, and that was somehow worse than the anger. Maybe not immediately, maybe not obviously, but piece by piece, day by day, watching everyone else shift while you couldn't, watching them bond while you stayed separate, it would have killed you. At least out there, you had a chance to find something else, to be something else. And if I died in the wild, if I'd frozen to death or been torn apart by mountain cats or starved in the first week, then at least you'd have died free. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Kaelyn felt something crack inside her chest, not the mate bond this time, that was long dead, but something else. Some last fragile hope that maybe he'd regretted it, that maybe he'd spent the last 3 months wondering if he'd made a mistake. He hadn't. He'd convinced himself he'd done the right thing, had wrapped his cruelty in nobility and persuaded himself it was kindness. You're a coward, she said softly. And worse than that, you're a coward who thinks he's brave. Darius's expression hardened. And what are you, Kaelyn? You come back here after 3 months walking through my territory like you own it, disrupting pack business, making threats. I haven't made any threats. Your presence is a threat. Whatever you've become, whatever power you've found, he gestured at the air around her, which was still humming with that strange energy. It's unstable, dangerous. I can feel it from here. Good. You should be afraid. I'm not afraid of you. Then you're stupider than I thought. The crowd had gone absolutely silent, every eye locked on them, like watching a collision they couldn't stop. What do you want? Darius asked finally. You didn't come back here just to yell at me. So what is it? Revenge? An apology? Your old position back? Kaelyn considered the question. What did she want? 3 months ago, she'd wanted to die. 2 months ago, she'd wanted to prove them wrong. 1 month ago, she'd wanted to burn this entire place to the ground. Now? I want you to understand, she said. I want every wolf in this room to understand exactly what you did when you threw me away. We know what we did. We made a hard choice. You made the wrong choice. She let the power rise, let it fill the hall until the air itself felt heavy. You assumed wolf was the only power that mattered. You assumed hierarchy was the only structure that worked. You assumed I was nothing without your definitions of worth. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I survived alone in the wild for 3 months without shifting once. I learned to hunt without claws. I learned to track without a wolf's nose. I learned to fight without pack strength backing me up. She met Darius's eyes and held them. And I discovered that I have something none of you possess. Something older. Something you can't categorize or control or exile when it doesn't fit your worldview. What are you talking about? Elder Garrett's voice cracked with age and fear. Kaelyn turned to face him, then swept her gaze across the assembled pack. You want a demonstration? Kaelyn. Darius's warning came too late. She reached for that deep well of power and pulled. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every wolf in the room staggered as if physically struck. She could feel their consciousness, that pack bond connecting them all, and she could feel how her power slid against it like oil on water, foreign and unsettling. She pushed harder. Several wolves dropped to their knees, gasping. The air grew thick enough to choke on. Reality itself seemed to bend around her, warping under pressure that had nothing to do with physical force. Stop! Darius's command held the full weight of an alpha's voice, that supernatural authority that compelled obedience from pack members. It didn't touch her. She wasn't pack anymore. Kaelyn held the pressure for 5 more seconds, watching them struggle, watching them understand viscerally what she'd tried to explain with words. Then she released it. The collective exhale was audible. That, she said into the ringing silence, is what you threw away. That's what you decided wasn't worth keeping. Darius had gone pale. What the hell was that? I don't know. I don't have a name for it. I don't have training for it. All I know is it's mine, it's powerful, and it's growing stronger every day. She smiled without humor. Imagine what I could have done for this pack if you'd given me the chance to develop it here, with guidance and support and people who gave a damn whether I lived or died. Kaelyn, but you didn't. You saw something you couldn't understand, and you destroyed it. Classic Velkar move, really. If it doesn't fit the mold, break it. That's not fair. Fair! The word came out as a snarl. You want to talk about fair? You ripped out my soul and threw me to the wolves, literally, and now you're concerned about fairness? I made the choice I thought was right, and I'm making the choice I think is right. She spread her arms wide. I'm choosing to show you the consequence of your actions. I'm choosing to prove that your precious hierarchy is built on assumptions that don't hold up under pressure. I'm choosing to be the reminder that walks among you, the living proof that you fucked up. Darius's hands had curled into fists. You can't stay here. Watch me. I'm alpha now. What I say is law. Then make me leave. She stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Call your warriors. Exile me again. See how well that works this time. I could have you killed. You could try. They stood there inches apart, breathing hard, locked in a contest of wills that had no winners. This is insane, Darius said finally. You're asking me to let you back into a pack that exiled you, to live among wolves who watched you suffer, to pretend like the last 3 months didn't happen. I'm not asking for anything. I'm telling you I'm staying. You can accept that reality or you can fight it. Either way, I'm done letting you make decisions about my life. The council will never allow it. The council, Kaelyn said, raising her voice so it carried through the hall, can kiss my ass. Every single one of them stood silent while a scared girl was sentenced to death for the crime of being different. They don't get a vote anymore. Elder Garrett made a strangled sound of outrage. You're going to cause chaos, Darius said. You're going to tear this pack apart. Good. Maybe it needs to be torn apart. Maybe what you've built here is so rigid it'll shatter at the first real pressure. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. People will die. People die anyway. The coldness in her own voice surprised her. At least this way they die for something that matters, instead of maintaining a system that tosses them aside the moment they stop being useful. Darius stared at her like he'd never seen her before. What happened to you out there? I grew up. I stopped believing the stories you all told me about how the world works. I stopped accepting other people's definitions of my worth. She held his gaze. I became dangerous. You became bitter. I became realistic. There's no difference anymore. Maybe he was right. Maybe the wild had poisoned her, had turned legitimate anger into something toxic and self-destructive. Or maybe she'd finally seen the truth that soft-pack life had hidden from her, that the world was cruel and arbitrary, and the only person you could truly count on was yourself. I'm staying, she said again. You can fight me on it, but you'll lose. You can exile me again, but I'll come back. You can try to kill me, but good luck with that. She stepped back, addressing the room. I'm staying, and any wolf who has a problem with that can say so now. Silence. Not agreement. Not acceptance. But the heavy, resentful silence of people who'd been cornered and knew it. Fine. Darius's voice was flat. You want to stay? Stay. But you follow my rules. You answer to my authority. You don't use whatever that power is against pack members. And if you cause trouble, any trouble, I will put you down myself. Understood? Kaelyn smiled. Crystal clear, Alpha. The title came out mocking, deliberate. Something dangerous flashed in Darius's eyes. We're done here. Everyone out. Now. The pack didn't need to be told twice. They fled like water through a broken dam, desperate to escape the pressure that still lingered in the air. Within minutes, only Kaelyn and Darius remained. That was a mistake, he said quietly. Which part? All of it. Coming back. Challenging me publicly. Making threats you might not be able to back up. He moved closer, and there was something predatory in the movement now. You think you're stronger than me? You think that parlor trick with the air pressure makes you my equal? I think it makes me something you can't predict. That's better than equal. It makes you a liability. To who? You? Your precious pack structure? She laughed. Good. Liabilities keep you honest. They keep me violent. His voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. You want to see what happens when you push an alpha too far? Keep going, please. Is that a threat? It's a warning. The same warning I'm giving you now that I should have given you 3 months ago. You are playing a game you don't understand with people who've been playing it their entire lives. You have power, yes. But power without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. Maybe destruction is what's needed. Or maybe you're so angry you can't see the difference between justice and revenge anymore. The words hit harder than they should have, because he wasn't entirely wrong. The anger had been her fuel for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to want anything else. 3 months, she said. 3 months you let me think I was dead to you. Did you ever wonder if I actually died? Did you send anyone to check? Did you lose even one night of sleep thinking about what might be happening to me out there? Darius's expression shuddered. Every night. Liar. I'm a lot of things, Kaelyn, but I've never lied to you. Not once. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. You think I slept well knowing I'd sent you into the wild to die? You think I didn't second-guess every decision that led to that moment? Then why didn't you come after me? Because I'm alpha. Because 200 wolves depend on me to make decisions based on what's best for everyone, not just what I want. He was shouting now, the control finally breaking. You think I wanted to reject you? You think I enjoyed tearing out my own soul and pretending it didn't matter? You should have fought harder. I fought. I fought the council for 6 days before your bonding rite. I argued until I was hoarse. I threatened to leave the pack entirely if they didn't reconsider the laws around wolfless members. And you know what they said? They said if I left, they'd exile you anyway, and I'd have accomplished nothing except destroying everything my father built. Kaelyn felt the ground shift beneath her. You never told me that. What was I supposed to say? Sorry I have to destroy your life, but I tried really hard not to? That would have helped? It would have helped me understand. It wouldn't have changed anything. He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face, the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 months ago. The result would have been the same. You would still have been exiled. I would still have had to live with that decision. The only difference is you would have known I cared, and somehow that seems crueler. You don't get to decide what would have been cruel. That was my pain to bear. And it was my choice to make. His hands came up like he wanted to grab her, shake her, make her understand, but he stopped himself. I chose the pack. I chose responsibility over desire. And I'd make the same choice again because that's what leadership means. Then you're a terrible leader. Maybe. But I'm the only one they have. They stood there in the empty hall, breathing hard, both of them bleeding from wounds that couldn't be seen. Why did you really come back? Darius asked finally. And don't give me that speech about proving us wrong. What do you actually want? Kaelyn thought about lying, thought about maintaining the wall of anger and defiance she'd built so carefully. But she was tired. God, she was so tired of carrying this alone. I want to understand, she said quietly. I want to know if what I am, what I've become, is something that could have been prevented. If having a pack, having guidance, having people who cared would have made this power less terrifying. She looked at him. I want to know if you threw away something that could have been beautiful because you were too scared to find out what it was. Kaelyn, and I want you to admit you were wrong. Not about pack law or tradition or leadership philosophy. About me. About us. About the fact that loving someone means fighting for them even when it's hard, even when it costs you, even when everyone tells you not to. Darius's face had gone carefully blank. I can't give you that. Why not? Because I wasn't wrong. Keeping you would have destroyed this pack. You don't know that. And it would have destroyed you. You think you understand what it means to be alpha, but you don't. It means making impossible choices. It means sacrificing your own happiness for people who'll never appreciate it. It means living with blood on your hands and regret in your heart because the alternative is watching everything burn. That's a coward's excuse. It's reality. He stepped back and the distance felt final. You can stay. I won't fight you on it. But don't expect me to apologize for doing what needed to be done, and don't expect this pack to welcome you with open arms. You're a reminder of our failure, and people don't like looking at their failures. Good thing I'm not here to make people comfortable. No. You're here to cause problems and call it justice. He turned toward the door. There's an empty house on the eastern edge of the compound. You can have it. Stay out of pack business. Stay out of my way. And for God's sake, control that power of yours before you accidentally kill someone. Darius. He stopped but didn't turn around. For what it's worth, Kaelyn said, I didn't come back to destroy you. I came back to understand. But if understanding isn't possible, I'll settle for making sure you never forget what you did. I could never forget. His voice was rough. Not for a single day of my life. Then he was gone, and Kaelyn was alone in the hall where her life had ended 3 months ago. She sank down onto the cold stone floor and finally let herself feel the weight of it all. The anger, yes, but also the grief, the loss of something that could have been extraordinary if they'd both been braver. The worst part was understanding that Darius actually believed he'd done the right thing. He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who'd chosen duty over love and convinced himself it was noble. And she was just a girl who'd survived hell, only to find there was no home waiting at the end of it. Kaelyn sat there until the last light faded from the high windows. Then she stood, straightened her shoulders, and walked out to find the house Darius had mentioned. She'd demanded to stay. Now she had to figure out what the hell that actually meant. The house was small but functional. One room with a fireplace, a sleeping mat, and not much else. Someone had left basic supplies. Blankets, dried food, a few cooking implements. Charity from a pack that didn't want her but couldn't justify letting her starve. She built a fire and sat beside it, staring into the flames. A knock on the door made her tense. "It's open," she called. Her mother stepped inside, and the sight of her made Kaelyn's throat tight. Lyra looked like she'd aged a decade in 3 months. New lines around her eyes. Her hair more gray than brown now. "Baby," Lyra whispered, and then she was across the room, pulling Kaelyn into a crushing embrace. Kaelyn stood rigid for a moment. Then something broke and she was hugging back just as hard. Her face pressed into her mother's shoulder like she was 8 years old again. "I thought you were dead," Lyra said, her voice muffled. "I thought I'd sent you out there to die and I'd never know what happened to you." "I'm hard to kill, apparently." Lyra pulled back, her hands framing Kaelyn's face. "Let me look at you. God, you're so thin. And your eyes, what happened to your eyes?" "What do you mean?" "They're different. sharper, like you can see through things. Lyra's thumb brushed across Kaelyn's cheek. What did the wild do to you?
Made me stronger, made me angrier, made me into something they can't ignore. Kaelyn stepped back, suddenly uncomfortable with the intimacy. Why are you here? Because you're my daughter, and you've been gone for 3 months, and I need to know you're okay. I'm fine. You're not fine. Lyra searched for words. You're like a blade now. All edge and no softness. Softness gets you killed out there. This isn't out there. This is home.
This stopped being home the day they threw me out. The bitterness in her voice made Lyra flinch.
Don't pretend otherwise. You stood there and watched it happen. What was I supposed to do? Fight the entire council? Challenge alpha law? Yes! The word exploded out of her. You were supposed to fight for me. You were supposed to say, no, this is wrong. I don't care about your laws. She's my daughter, and you can't have her. They would have exiled us both. Then we'd have left together. We'd have found somewhere new, somewhere that didn't care about wolves or hierarchy or any of it. Kaelyn was breathing hard, 3 months of resentment pouring out. But you chose them. You chose staying here over protecting me. Lyra's face crumpled. I know. God help me. I know. And I've hated myself every day since.
Good, you should. Kaelyn, so did you know he fought for me? The question came out quieter. Darius? He told me tonight he spent 6 days arguing with the council, trying to change their minds. Lyra nodded slowly. I heard rumors. Elder Garrett was furious with him. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made it hurt less? Kaelyn thought about that. No, but at least I would have known someone tried. They stood in silence for a long moment. What are you going to do? Lyra asked finally.
I don't know. Stay. Prove them wrong. Figure out what I am. Kaelyn looked at her hands, watching the firelight play across her skin. Make sure they never forget what they did. That sounds like revenge. Maybe it is. Does that make it wrong?
It makes it dangerous. Lyra moved closer, her voice dropping. You need to be careful. Darius is alpha now, and he's under enormous pressure. The council watches his every move, looking for weakness. If you push too hard, if you make him look unstable or uncertain, they'll move against him. Let them. And then what? You think whoever replaces him will be better, more open-minded? Lyra shook her head. Elder Garrett would love to see Darius fail. He's been pushing his nephew for the position since the day Darius took it. His nephew? Cade Garrett, 25, ambitious, and absolutely loyal to traditional pack structure. If he becomes alpha, the first thing he'll do is exile you again, permanently. Kaelyn processed this information. Politics. Of course. It was always politics beneath the surface. So what you're saying is, I should be nice to Darius, make his life easier? I'm saying you should be smart. Pick your battles. Don't give the council ammunition to use against either of you. When did you become so political? When I realized politics is the only power women have in this pack if they don't have claws.
Lyra's smile was sad. I learned to navigate these waters years ago. Let me teach you. Kaelyn wanted to refuse on principle, wanted to tell her mother she didn't need help, didn't want advice from someone who'd failed to protect her when it mattered.
But she was exhausted and alone. And maybe, just maybe, having someone in her corner, even someone who'd disappointed her, was better than facing this entirely by herself. Okay, she said finally, teach me. Lyra's expression brightened with something like hope. First lesson. Tomorrow, half the pack will expect you to challenge Darius publicly for dominance. Don't. Why not? Because that's what they want. They want drama. They want a power struggle they can point to and say, see, this is why we exile the different ones. Don't give them that satisfaction. What should I do instead? Be quiet. Be calm. Show them you're not a threat to pack stability. Lyra's eyes gleamed with something cunning. Let them underestimate you while you figure out who your actual allies are. I don't have allies. Everyone has allies. They just don't know it yet. She squeezed Kaelyn's hand. Trust me on this. I've been watching pack politics for 20 years. I know how to navigate them. Kaelyn wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't care about politics or allies or any of it, but a small, strategic part of her brain recognized the wisdom in her mother's words. Fine, she said. I'll be quiet. For now. That's all I ask. Lyra moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Whatever that power is you have, the thing you did in the hall, don't use it casually. It scares them. Scared people make bad decisions. Let them be scared. Fear and respect are not the same thing. Learn the difference. Then she was gone, leaving Kaelyn alone with thoughts that wouldn't settle. She lay on the sleeping mat and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Tomorrow she'd have to face the pack as a permanent member rather than a returning specter. Tomorrow the real work would begin, figuring out where she fit in a hierarchy that had already rejected her once. Tomorrow she'd have to decide if she wanted to burn this place down or build something new from the ashes. But tonight, she let herself feel the smallest flicker of something that might have been hope. She'd survived. She'd returned. She'd proven they were wrong about her. Now she just had to figure out what came next before the whole thing collapsed around her. Outside, a wolf howled. Long and lonely and achingly familiar. Kaelyn closed her eyes and tried not to think about mate bonds and rejected futures and the way Darius had looked at her like she was both everything he wanted and everything he couldn't have. She tried not to think about the fact that some part of her still wanted him to fight for her, even now, even after everything. She tried not to think about how much easier it would be to just leave, to walk away from this place and everyone in it, to find somewhere new where she could start over without the weight of the past crushing her. But she'd never been good at taking the easy path, so instead she lay there in the darkness, listening to the pack settle around her and made herself a promise. She would not break. No matter what they threw at her, no matter how hard they pushed, she would not break. They'd tried to destroy her once. She wouldn't give them a second chance. Somewhere in the compound, she felt rather than heard Darius moving through his territory, checking borders, maintaining the routines that kept pack life functioning. And despite everything, despite the anger and the betrayal and the 3 months of hell, some traitorous part of her still reached for that phantom connection, still searched for the mate bond that no longer existed, still wanted something that was never coming back. Kaelyn rolled onto her side, pressed her face into the thin pillow, and refused to cry. She was done crying. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin, and this time, she wouldn't be the one kneeling in the dirt. This time, she'd make them all understand exactly what they'd created when they threw her away. This time, a sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Kaelyn Rourke. The voice was unfamiliar, male, carrying an edge of authority. By order of the Alpha, you're summoned to emergency council. Now. She sat up slowly. What's happened? Rogues crossed the northern border an hour ago. They're asking for you by name. Her blood went cold. What? They say they have information about what you are, about where your power comes from. The voice paused. And they say if you don't meet with them by dawn, they'll assume your pack property and act accordingly. Kaelyn was on her feet, her heart hammering. Act accordingly how? The door opened to reveal a young warrior she didn't recognize. His face was grim. They're threatening war, Kaelyn, and they're using you as the excuse. The world tilted. This was it, the point of no return. Because now it wasn't just about her and Darius and old wounds that wouldn't heal. Now it was about the pack's survival, and the choice she made in the next few hours would determine whether people lived or died. She followed the warrior into the night, her mind racing, and realized with crystal clarity that everything she thought she understood about her situation had just become infinitely more. The council hall was already packed when Kaelyn arrived. Every elder and senior warrior crammed into the space with an urgency that made the air feel electric. Darius stood at the center, his face carved from stone. And when his eyes found hers across the room, something passed between them that had no name. Not quite alliance, not quite understanding, but something close to mutual recognition that they were both about to get dragged into hell. Where are they? Kaelyn asked, pushing through the crowd. Northern Watchtower. Elder Garrett's voice was clipped. 3 of them. They won't speak to anyone but you. Did they say what pack they're from? No pack. This came from a warrior named Seth, his face tight with tension. They're wearing symbols I've never seen. Old symbols. The kind you find in ruins, not on living wolves. Kaelyn's stomach dropped. Show me. Seth pulled out a crude sketch. 3 interlocking spirals inside a circle with what looked like claw marks radiating outward. The moment she saw it, That power beneath her skin surged violently enough to make her gasp. What? Darius was beside her instantly. What is it? I don't know. But she was lying. Because somewhere deep in her bones, in that place where the strange power lived, she recognized that symbol, had seen it in dreams she couldn't quite remember. I need to talk to them. Absolutely not. Elder Garrett stepped forward. This is clearly a trap. They show up the same day you return, use you as leverage to threaten the pack. It's too convenient. He's right. Darius's jaw was tight. We don't know what they want. We don't know if you're bait or prize, or maybe they actually know what I am. Kaelyn met his eyes, which is more than anyone here can say. That doesn't mean we trust them. I'm not asking permission. She turned to address the room. They asked for me. I'm going to talk to them. You can send guards. You can watch from a distance, but I'm going. Kaelyn, her mother's voice sharp with fear. If there's even a chance they can tell me what this power is, where it came from, why I have it, I have to know. She looked at Darius. Wouldn't you, if you were in my position? Something shifted in his expression. Yes? Then let me go. Elder Garrett made a sound of protest, but Darius raised a hand. She goes, but I'm coming with her, and we bring warriors. His tone left no room for argument. If this turns hostile, we end it fast. 20 minutes later, Kaelyn found herself walking through the dark forest toward the northern watchtower, Darius at her left, 4 warriors at her back. The night was impossibly still. No wind, no animal sounds, nothing but their footsteps crunching through old snow. Whatever they tell you, Darius said quietly, don't believe it without verification. You think they're going to lie? I think people who show up in the middle of the night making threats usually have an agenda. He glanced at her. Just be careful. Since when do you care if I'm careful? Since always. The words came out rough. That never changed. Before she could respond, the watchtower came into view. 3 figures stood at its base, and even from a distance, Kaelyn could feel the wrongness radiating from them. They weren't quite wolves. Their silhouettes held too still. Their presence felt too heavy, like reality bent slightly around them. As they got closer, she could make out details. All 3 wore dark clothing marked with that spiral symbol. All 3 had eyes that reflected the moonlight wrong. Too bright, too aware, too ancient. The one in the center stepped forward as they approached. Female, maybe 40, with silver hair and a face that might have been beautiful if it wasn't so utterly cold. Kaelyn Rourke. Her voice was silk over razors. Finally. Who are you? My name is Mira, and I'm here to bring you home. The word landed like a physical blow. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Mira's smile was knowing. You felt it your entire life. That sense of not quite fitting. That awareness that something was different, wrong, missing. They told you it was because you had no wolf. She tilted her head. They lied. Darius moved forward, placing himself slightly between Kaelyn and the strangers. State your business or leave our territory. Your territory. Mira laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. Such a possessive little alpha. Tell me, Darius Velkar, do you claim her? Is she pack property now? She's under my protection. That's not what I asked. Mira's eyes fixed on him with predatory focus. 3 months ago, you threw her away like garbage, ripped out her soul and exiled her to die. Now suddenly she's worth protecting? How convenient. How do you know about that? Kaelyn's voice came out harder than intended. We know everything about you, child. We've been watching since the day you were born. Mira's attention shifted back to her. Did you never wonder why your mother chose to live in this backwater territory? Why someone from a bloodline as old as hers settled for being a council member's wife in a minor pack? Kaelyn felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What are you talking about? Ask her yourself. Ask Lyra Ashwood, because that's her real name, not Rourke. Why she ran. Why she hid you here among these lesser wolves. Why she never told you the truth about what you are. She's lying. Darius's hand went to the blade at his belt. This is manipulation. Is it? Mira pulled something from her pocket. A photograph, old and faded. She held it out. Then explain this. Kaelyn took it with shaking hands. The image showed a young woman who looked exactly like her mother, standing in front of a massive stone compound. But it wasn't the architecture that made Kaelyn's breath catch. It was the symbol carved above the entrance. The same three interlocking spirals, the same claw marks radiating outward. And beside her mother stood a man Kaelyn had never seen before. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that even in the photograph seemed to glow with that same wrong light. "Who is that?" she whispered.
"Your father." Mira's voice was gentle now, almost kind. "Your real father. Not the wolf who claimed you, but the man who gave you that power you're so desperately trying to understand." The world tilted violently. "No." The word came out automatic. "My father was Marcus Rourke. He died when I was 10. Marcus Rourke was a convenient fiction, a wolf your mother married to hide among this pack, to raise you as one of them." Mira stepped closer. "But you were never meant to be a wolf, Kaelyn. You were meant to be something so much more. You're insane." But even as she said it, pieces were clicking into place. The way her mother had always been slightly separate from the pack. The way she'd known things she shouldn't. The way she'd pushed Kaelyn to run south, away from everyone, instead of trying to keep her close. "Am I? Then how did you survive 3 months in the wild with no wolf? How did you develop power that no one here recognizes? How did you do things that should be impossible?" Mira's smile widened. "Because you're not wolf blood, child. You're scion." The word resonated through Kaelyn's chest like a bell. "What does that mean?" "It means you're descended from the old bloodlines. The ones that existed before packs, before hierarchies, before wolves decided they were the apex of evolution." Mira gestured to her companions. "We are what remains of that world. And you're the first new scion born in 50 years. Kaelyn looked at Darius, desperate for him to deny it, to call this obvious manipulation, to do something other than stand there with an expression that suggested he was doing calculations she couldn't follow. "Even if this is true," he said carefully, "why come now? Why threaten the pack to get to her?" "Because we've given Lyra 18 years to tell her daughter the truth, 18 years to prepare her for what she'd become. And instead, she hid. She pretended. She let you wolves treat her daughter like a defect instead of a miracle." Mira's voice hardened. "That ends tonight." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Kaelyn said. "You don't have a choice. Your power is awakening. Without training, without guidance, you'll lose control. You'll hurt people. Probably kill them." Mira's expression was pitying. "You think that little display in the council hall was impressive? That was nothing. A candle flame compared to what you'll become. And when the real power hits, when you can't contain it anymore, this entire pack will burn." "She's trying to scare you," Darius said. "Don't listen." "I'm trying to save her," Mira snapped. "And the rest of you, frankly, though you don't deserve it. She comes with us. We teach her control, and nobody dies. She stays here, playing house with wolves who can't help her, and eventually that power will explode outward and kill everyone within a mile." "You have no proof of that," Darius said. "Don't I?" Mira looked at Kaelyn. "Tell him about the nightmares. The ones where you wake up covered in sweat, where reality feels thin as paper. Tell him about the times when you lose a few seconds, when the world seems to skip forward and you can't remember what happened." Kaelyn's blood went cold, because that had been happening. Small moments of lost time, of consciousness fracturing, that she'd been writing off as stress or exhaustion. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "Because every scion goes through it. The awakening is violent, dangerous, and it's already started in you." Mira held out her hand. "Come with us. Let us teach you. Or stay here and watch everyone you've ever known die screaming." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Darius spoke, his voice deadly calm. "Get off my territory, now." "Or what? You'll attack us," Mira laughed. "Go ahead, try. See what happens when you raise a weapon against a full scion." "I don't care what you are." "Darius." Kaelyn's voice stopped him. "Don't." Because she could feel it now, the power radiating from Mira and her companions. It dwarfed her own awakening abilities the way an ocean dwarfed a puddle. If Darius attacked, he'd die. They all would. "I need to talk to my mother," Kaelyn said. "Of course you do." Mira's smile was knowing. We'll wait at the border. You have until dawn to decide. Come with us willingly, or we take you by force. Either way, you're leaving this place." "Like hell," Darius started. "Dawn, Kaelyn. Choose wisely." Then they were gone, moving through the forest with a speed that was absolutely not natural, leaving nothing behind but that wrongness in the air and a photograph that proved Kaelyn's entire life had been built on lies. She stared at the image of her mother and the stranger with glowing eyes and felt something inside her crack wide open. "Kaelyn." Darius reached for her. "Don't." She jerked away. "Just don't."
We need to get back to the compound, talk to Lyra, figure out what's true and what's manipulation. What if it's all true? The question came out raw. What if everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong? What if I'm not even supposed to exist? You exist. You're standing right here. That's all that matters. Is it? She looked at him, and the anger that had sustained her for 3 months suddenly felt hollow. You rejected me because I didn't fit your definition of acceptable. What happens if I'm not even the species you thought I was? What happens if I'm something that shouldn't be here at all? Then we figure it out, together. His jaw was tight. But we don't trust strangers who show up making threats. We verify. We investigate. We don't just accept what they say at face value. They knew things they shouldn't know. So does every good con artist. This isn't a con, Darius. The words exploded out of her. Look at that photograph. That's my mother, young, standing in front of a building with that exact symbol. How do you explain that? I can't, but your mother can. So let's go ask her. The walk back to the compound felt like moving through quicksand. Every step required conscious effort. Every breath felt like dragging razors through her lungs. By the time they reached her mother's house, Kaelyn's hands were shaking. Lyra answered on the first knock, took one look at Kaelyn's face, and went pale. "They found you," she whispered. "So it's true." The words felt like broken glass in Kaelyn's throat. "All of it." "Baby, let me explain." "Were you ever going to tell me?" Kaelyn pushed past her into the small house. "Or were you just going to let me think I was defective forever? Let me believe there was something wrong with me because I couldn't do what the other wolves did. I was protecting you." "From what? The truth? My own identity?" Kaelyn whirled on her. "I spent 18 years thinking I was broken, thinking I wasn't good enough. And you knew. You knew the whole time that I was never supposed to have a wolf, that I was something completely different, and you said nothing." "I said nothing because I was trying to keep you alive," Lyra's voice cracked. "You think scions are accepted? You think the wolves would have let you stay if they knew what you were? They would have killed you the moment you were born. So you lied instead, made me think I was worthless. I made you think you were normal. I gave you a childhood. I gave you 18 years of safety." "Safety?" Kaelyn laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "They exiled me, Mother. They threw me into the wild to die. Some safety you provided." Lyra's face crumpled. "I know, God, I know. And if I could go back, if I could change it." "But you can't. And now those people are at the border saying I have until dawn to go with them, or they take me by force. So maybe you should start explaining, because I have about 6 hours to decide if I trust you or them. And right now, the strangers are winning." The silence stretched thin. Then Lyra sank into a chair, her entire body seeming to fold inward. "Sit down, both of you. This is going to take a while." Darius moved to stand behind Kaelyn, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence like a solid thing to lean against if she needed. "My name is Lyra Ashwood," her mother began. "I was born in the Scion Collective, a community of what wolves call the old bloodlines. We're descended from the original magic users before the world split into separate species, before packs and territories and all the rest." "The man in the photograph?" Kaelyn forced the words out. "Your father, Aaron Ashwood. He was collective leadership, one of the most powerful scions in 3 generations." Lyra's hands twisted together. "And he was absolutely certain that scions were superior to wolves, that we should rule over them, use them, treat them as lesser beings. You disagreed. I thought he was insane, thought the whole ideology was poison." Lyra looked up, her eyes wet. "But I loved him. And I thought love would be enough to change his mind. God, I was stupid." "What happened?"
Darius asked quietly. I got pregnant, and suddenly all of Aaron's theories about bloodline purity became very personal. He wanted to raise you as a weapon, train you from birth to be the ultimate expression of Scion power, use you to prove wolf dominance was a lie. Lyra's voice shook. I realized I'd made a terrible mistake, so I ran. How? Kaelyn's throat was tight, and
I faked my death, burned down our house with enough magical signature that everyone assumed I'd died in the fire. Then I disappeared into wolf territory, found the quietest, most isolated pack I could, and convinced a decent man named Marcus Rourke to marry me and claim you as his. Lyra wiped her eyes. He knew the truth. He agreed anyway, said every child deserved protection regardless of what they were. And when he died, it was convenient timing. The fever that went through the pack 10 years ago, it was real. But Marcus's death wasn't from illness. The collective found us. Found him. Killed him to punish me for running. Her voice broke. They left you alive because they wanted me to know they could take you whenever they chose. It was a message. Kaelyn felt like she'd been gutted. You knew they killed him and you stayed here?
Where else could I go? They were hunting me. If I ran, they'd follow and they'd take you. At least here, among wolves, you were partially hidden. The pack bond masked your Scion signature. Lyra looked at her desperately. I did everything I could to keep you safe. Everything. Except tell me the truth. Because the truth would have gotten you killed. You think the wolves would have accepted you if they knew? You think Darius's father would have let you live? She deserved to know what she was, Darius said, his voice hard. She deserved to live, Lyra shot back. And she did. For 18 years she lived. She had friends and training and a future. Until you destroyed it.
Don't! Kaelyn's word cut through the building argument. Don't blame him for your lies. You had 18 years to tell me. 18 years to prepare me for what I'd become. Instead, you let me walk into that bonding rite blind, let me think I was broken when my wolf didn't come, let me get exiled into the wild with no understanding of what I actually was. I thought we had more time. We didn't. And now those people are at the border saying if I don't go with them, I'll lose control and kill everyone here. Is that true? Lyra's silence was answer enough. Oh my God! Kaelyn's legs felt weak. How long? The awakening varies. Some Scions have months to learn control. Others have weeks. In your case, Lyra swallowed hard. Given how powerful your bloodline is, probably days. Maybe a week if we're lucky. So my options are go with murderers who want to use me as a weapon, or stay here and become a bomb that'll explode and kill everyone I've ever known. Kaelyn laughed, the sound edging toward hysteria. Fantastic. Great options, Mother. Really stellar work. There might be a third option, Darius said. Both women turned to him. What if we contacted another Scion group? One that isn't affiliated with the collective, that could teach her control without the agenda. There aren't any, Lyra said flatly. The collective is all that remains. Everyone else either joined them or was killed decades ago. Then we find someone who knows about Scion magic. A scholar, a historian, someone... You think I didn't try that? You think in 18 years I didn't search for alternatives? Lyra's voice rose. There are no alternatives. It's them or nothing. Then nothing it is, Kaelyn said quietly. You'd rather die than learn from them? I'd rather die than become whatever my father wanted me to be. She met her mother's eyes. You ran from him for a reason. I'm choosing to trust that reason. Kaelyn, please. No. She stood, surprised her legs held her. I'm done. Done with lies, done with manipulation, done with people making decisions about my life without asking what I want. If I'm going to lose control and kill people, then I'm going to spend whatever time I have left somewhere far from here where I can't hurt anyone. That's suicide, Darius said. Maybe. Or maybe I'll figure out control on my own. Either way, it's my choice. She looked at him. I want everyone evacuated from the compound. Tomorrow morning, first light. Anyone who can travel needs to be gone before this power decides to do whatever Mira says it'll do. I'm not abandoning the territory. Yes, you are, because if you don't, their blood is on my hands, and I won't live with that. Her voice cracked. Please, Darius. For once, just do what I ask without fighting me. Something in her expression must have reached him, because he nodded slowly. 24 hours. I'll give the evacuation order at dawn. Thank you. She moved toward the door, desperate to get out before she fell apart completely.
Kaelyn, her mother's voice stopped her. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm so sorry. Kaelyn looked back at the woman who'd lied to her for 18 years, who'd hidden the truth to protect her, who'd watched her suffer rather than risk exposing what she really was. I know, she said, but sorry doesn't change what's coming. Then she walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, her entire world reduced to ashes and the ticking clock of her own destruction.
She made it halfway across the compound before her legs gave out. Kaelyn sank onto a bench near the training grounds and tried to process everything. Tried to find some solid ground to stand on when everything she'd believed had been revealed as fiction. Her father wasn't dead. He was alive, leading a group that wanted to use her as a weapon. Her mother had lied about everything. She wasn't wolf blood, wasn't even the same species as the people she'd grown up with. And in a matter of days, maybe hours, the power inside her would explode outward and kill everyone nearby. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She'd survived 3 months in the wild, had fought her way back, had stood before the pack and demanded recognition, only to discover she was a walking bomb with no way to defuse it. You're thinking about running, Darius's voice came from behind her. That obvious?
I'd be thinking the same thing. He sat beside her, close but not touching. Where would you go? Far, somewhere isolated. Somewhere I could explode in peace without taking anyone else with me. Sounds lonely. Better lonely than murderous. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Darius spoke, his voice careful. What if Mira was lying? What if the loss of control thing is manipulation to scare you into going with them? What if she wasn't? What if I stay and kill you all because I was too proud to admit I needed help? Then we die knowing you tried to protect us. That's worth something. Not to me, Kaelyn's hands clenched. I can't have more blood on my conscience, Darius. I can't. You don't have any blood on your conscience. Not yet, but if I stay, if you go with them, you'll have blood on your conscience anyway. Just different blood. He turned to face her. They'll turn you into a weapon. Your mother said it herself. That's what your father wanted. That's what the collective does. Is that really better than the risk of losing control here? At least with them, I might learn control. At what cost? She didn't have an answer. The sky was starting to lighten in the east, streaks of pink and gold bleeding across the horizon. Dawn was coming. Decision time. I don't know what to do, she said finally, the admission tearing out of her. Every option ends in disaster. Every path leads to people dying. How am I supposed to choose? You choose the path where you don't lose yourself. Darius's hand found hers, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. You choose the path where you stay you, even if it's harder, even if it's more dangerous, because the moment you let fear make your decisions, you've already lost. That's easy for you to say. You're not the bomb. No. But I'm the one who made you feel like you had to be perfect to deserve existence. His grip tightened. I'm the one who looked at something I didn't understand and decided it wasn't worth keeping. So maybe I don't get a vote here. Maybe my opinion is worthless after what I did. But I'm giving it anyway. Which is, stay, fight, figure this out on your own terms, not theirs. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. You survived 3 months in hell. You came back stronger than anyone expected. You've done impossible things already. What's one more? This one might kill you. Then it kills me. I'll die knowing I finally did the right thing. Kaelyn stared at him, this man who'd destroyed her and was now asking her to trust him, and felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe it was insanity. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just exhaustion wearing down her defenses. But she realized she believed him. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. But the evacuation still happens. I'm not negotiating on that. Deal. They sat there as the sun rose, hands clasped, both knowing they'd just committed to a path that would likely end in fire and blood. But at least it was their choice. At least they'd go down fighting. The sound of footsteps made them both tense. Kaelyn turned to find Mira standing at the edge of the training ground, her expression amused. How touching, she said, the wolf and the scion, united against the cruel world. It's almost poetic.
I'm not going with you, Kaelyn said. I know, I heard the whole conversation. Mira's smile widened. Which is why I'm afraid I have to adjust the terms of our agreement. There was no agreement. Well, you don't come with us. We take you by force. That was the deal. But seeing how attached you are to these wolves, I think we need additional insurance. Mira raised her hand, and suddenly there were shapes emerging from the forest. Dozens of them, all wearing that spiral symbol. What are you doing? Darius was on his feet, blade drawn, making sure Kaelyn understands the stakes. Mira's eyes fixed on Kaelyn. You have power, yes. Raw, untrained, violent power. But you have no control, no finesse. You're a child playing with matches in a fireworks factory. Get to the point. The point is, if you won't come willingly, we'll make you come, and we'll make sure you're motivated to cooperate. Mira gestured, and two of her people stepped forward, dragging someone between them. Kaelyn's heart stopped. It was her mother. Lyra looked beaten, her face bruised, her hands bound behind her back. But her eyes were fierce and defiant. Let her go, Kaelyn said, her voice deadly calm. Or what? You'll attack us? Please do. I'd love to see what happens when you try to use that power against trained scions. Mira's smile was cruel. Here's the new deal, Kaelyn. You come with us right now, you cooperate fully with training, and your mother lives. You refuse, you fight, you cause any problems, and we kill her slowly enough that you can feel every second of it through that lovely empathy bond scions share with their blood relatives. The world narrowed to a single point of crystalline horror. You're bluffing, Darius said. Am I? Mira nodded to one of her people, who produced a knife and held it to Lyra's throat. Shall we test that theory? Don't, Lyra said, her voice strong despite the fear in her eyes. Don't give them what they want, Kaelyn. Let them kill me. You can survive that. Shut up. The words came out broken. Because her mother was wrong. She couldn't survive that. Couldn't live knowing she'd let someone die to preserve her own freedom. 10 seconds, Mira said pleasantly. Then we start cutting. Kaelyn looked at Darius, saw the helpless rage on his face, the calculation that was reaching the same conclusion she was. They couldn't win this fight. Not against this many trained scions. Not without her losing control and killing everyone, including her mother. She looked at Lyra, saw the woman who'd lied to her, protected her, loved her in the only way she knew how. She looked at the compound behind them, at the pack beginning to stir with the dawn, at 200 wolves who had no idea they were standing at ground zero of a supernatural war. And she understood with perfect, terrible clarity that there was no good choice here, only degrees of catastrophe. 5 seconds. Kaelyn felt the power surge inside her, felt it responding to her fury and terror and desperation, felt it reaching for that threshold Mira had described, where control became impossible and destruction became stop. The word ripped from Kaelyn's throat before conscious thought could form. The power that had been spiraling toward catastrophic release suddenly inverted, channeling through her voice with enough raw force that the earth beneath their feet cracked. Every scion in the clearing stumbled backward. Mira's eyes widened, the first genuine surprise Kaelyn had seen on that cold face. Interesting. Let my mother go. Kaelyn's hands were shaking, but her voice held steady. Let her go and I'll come with you, willingly. No resistance, no complications. Kaelyn, no! Darius's voice came from behind her, rough with pain. She didn't turn. Couldn't afford to look at him, to see whatever expression would make her reconsider this choice. Do we have a deal? Mira studied her for a long moment, calculation flickering behind those two bright eyes. Then she smiled. You're smarter than your mother gave you credit for. Very well. Release the woman. The two scions, holding Lyra, shoved her forward hard enough that she stumbled and nearly fell. Kaelyn caught her, steadied her, felt her mother's hands grip her arms with desperate strength. Don't do this, Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. Please, baby. They'll destroy everything you are. They'll teach me control. That's more than anyone here can do. Kaelyn forced herself to meet her mother's eyes. And if I stay, if I let this power explode, everyone dies. You, Darius, the entire pack. I won't have that blood on my hands. There has to be another way. There isn't. We both know it. Kaelyn's throat tightened.
You spent 18 years protecting me. Let me protect you now.
Tears tracked down Lyra's bruised face.
I'm so sorry. For all of it. For lying. For not preparing you. I know. Kaelyn pulled her into a fierce hug, breathed in the familiar scent of her mother one last time. Take care of them, the pack. Don't let them forget what happened here. Kaelyn, go, now, before I change my mind. Lyra pulled back, her hands framing Kaelyn's face. I will find a way to fix this. I swear on everything I am, I will find a way.
Then she was moving, stumbling toward where Darius stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Kaelyn watched her mother reach him, watched Lyra grab his arm and pull, watched him resist for 3 heartbeats before finally allowing himself to be dragged backward. His eyes locked with hers across the distance. The mate bond was dead, shattered beyond repair 3 months ago. But something in that look, something raw and desperate and absolutely furious, made her chest ache like the breaking had just happened all over again. I'll come back for you, he mouthed. She shook her head once. Don't. Touching. Mira's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Now that the melodrama is complete, shall we... Darius shifted. 1 second he was human. The next, his wolf form exploded into motion with speed that defied physics, closing the distance to Mira in a blur of fur and fury. No! Kaelyn's scream came too late. Mira's hand shot out almost lazily. Power crackled through the air. Not fire or lightning, but something worse. Something that looked like reality itself twisting into a weapon. It caught Darius mid-leap and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crater the earth. He tried to rise, failed, tried again. Persistent. Mira's tone was bored. I'll give him that much. She gestured, and invisible force pinned Darius flat, pressing down with enough weight that the ground beneath him splintered further. His wolf form writhed, struggling against pressure that should have crushed his spine. Stop it! Kaelyn lunged forward, but hands grabbed her from behind, other scions materializing from the tree line, their grips unbreakable. You're killing him! Not yet, but I could. Mira crouched beside Darius's trapped form, her expression thoughtful. Should I? Would that make your cooperation more genuine? Or would it break you so completely that you'd be useless? Don't. Please. The words tasted like ashes. I gave you my word. I'll come willingly. Just don't kill him. Your word. Mira's laugh was soft and cruel. Given under duress, worth precisely nothing. She placed her hand on Darius's head, her fingers digging into his fur. But perhaps a demonstration is in order. Let's see how much pain an alpha can endure before... The power exploded out of Kaelyn without conscious direction. One moment she was restrained, helpless, watching Darius suffer. The next, that strange energy inside her detonated outward in a shockwave that sent every scion within 20 feet flying backward. The hands holding her released. The pressure on Darius vanished. She stood in the center of a circle of destruction, her skin glowing faintly, the air around her rippling with heat that had nothing to do with temperature. Touch him again, she said quietly, and I'll kill you. I don't care if I die doing it. I don't care if I lose control and take everyone with me. You touch him again and we all burn. Mira picked herself up slowly, blood trickling from her nose. But she was smiling. There it is. The real power. Not that controlled parlor trick you've been practicing, but the raw force underneath. She wiped the blood away. Beautiful. I mean it. I know you do. That's what makes it perfect. Mira's eyes gleamed. That rage, that desperate protective instinct, that's the fuel we need. That's what we'll teach you to harness and direct and weaponize until you can level cities with it. Kaelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach, because Mira wasn't afraid, wasn't even concerned. She was excited. He comes with us, Kaelyn said. Excuse me? You want me cooperative? You want me to actually learn instead of fighting every step? Then he comes with us, alive, unharmed, as insurance that I'll behave. She gestured to where Darius had struggled back to his feet, his wolf form bleeding from a dozen wounds. Otherwise, you get the uncontrolled explosion. Your choice. Mira's smile widened. Clever, using our own leverage against us. Your father would be proud. She tilted her head, considering. Very well. The alpha comes. But understand, the moment you step out of line, the moment you refuse an order or fail a lesson, he pays the price. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. Mira turned to her companions. Bind the wolf. If he shifts or attacks, break his legs. Two scions moved forward with what looked like silver chains, not enough to hold a healthy alpha, but more than enough for one already beaten half to death. They wrapped the restraints around Darius's wolf form, and he snarled but didn't fight. His eyes found Kaelyn's. Even through the wolf consciousness, she could read the question there. What the hell are you doing? Buying time, she thought back, knowing he couldn't hear her. Keeping you alive, figuring out how to survive this. Move, Mira commanded. They marched into the forest, 6 scions forming a perimeter with Kaelyn and the chained Darius at the center. Lyra and the warriors had vanished, fled back to the compound or taken different paths. Kaelyn couldn't tell. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the mist, and with each step she felt the pack territory falling further behind. No one spoke. The only sounds were footsteps and Darius's labored breathing and the occasional bird call from the canopy above. After an hour, Darius shifted back to human form. The change left him gasping, his body covered in bruises and cuts that would have hospitalized a normal person. The scions tossed him a pair of pants without comment. "You're an idiot," Kaelyn said quietly. "Probably." His voice was rough. "But I'm an idiot who's not leaving you with these psychopaths. You can't help me here. You're just giving them leverage. Then they have leverage." He managed to get his legs under him to stand despite the chains and the injuries. "Better that than spending the rest of my life wondering what they did to you. Your pack needs you. My pack has Lyra and the Council and 200 capable wolves. They'll survive." His eyes locked with hers. "You might not, so here I am. You're going to get yourself killed. Wouldn't be the first stupid decision I've made regarding you." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. "At least this time I'm choosing the right side." Before Kaelyn could respond, Mira's voice cut in. "How touching. The Alpha develops a conscience. Pity it's about 3 months too late to matter." "Better late than never," Darius said. "Is it? I wonder." Mira glanced back at them. "Tell me, Alpha, when you ripped out her soul and exiled her to die, did you think about this moment? Did you imagine a future where you'd regret that choice? Every single day. And yet you did it anyway, made the hard choice, sacrificed love for duty." Mira's smile was venomous. "How's that working out for you?" Darius said nothing. They walked for hours through terrain that grew progressively stranger, trees twisted into shapes that hurt to look at, streams that flowed uphill, patches of ground where gravity seemed negotiable. This was old land, Kaelyn realized. Land that predated wolf territories and human settlements, where the boundaries between possible and impossible had worn thin. By midday, they reached a cave system carved into the side of a mountain that shouldn't have existed in this geography. The entrance was marked with that spiral symbol, but massive, 10 feet tall and glowing with faint phosphorescence. "First waypoint," Mira announced. "We rest here until dark, then continue." The interior of the cave was larger than it should have been. The walls covered in more symbols that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. Someone had set up a camp, bedrolls, supplies, a fire pit already laid with wood. "How many of these do you have?" Kaelyn asked. "Enough. We've been preparing for your arrival for years." Mira gestured to a corner. "Sit, eat if you're hungry. We have a long night ahead." Kaelyn sank down against the wall, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. Darius settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and she hated how much comfort that small contact provided. "What's the plan?" he murmured, too quiet for the scions to hear. "Stay alive. Learn what they're willing to teach. Look for escape opportunities." She glanced at him. "You shouldn't have come. We've established that. Move on." "Darius, I spent 3 months thinking you were dead or dying. Spent 3 months living with the fact that I'd killed you as surely as if I'd done it with my own hands." His jaw tightened. "I'm not doing that again. So whatever happens next, we face it together. End of discussion." The certainty in his voice made something in her chest crack open. "You're still an idiot," she whispered. "Establish that too." His hand found hers in the space between their bodies, his fingers lacing through hers. "But I'm your idiot. For whatever that's worth." It was worth more than she wanted to admit. They sat in silence while the scions prepared food and checked weapons and discussed plans in low voices that didn't carry. As the light faded from the cave entrance, Mira approached with 2 bowls of something that smelled like stew. "Eat," she said. "You'll need your strength." Kaelyn took the bowl, sniffed it carefully. "It's drugged." "Of course it is. Mild sedative to keep you calm during transport. You'll be conscious but manageable." Mira's smile was sharp. "Drink it voluntarily or we'll force it down your throat. Your choice." Kaelyn looked at Darius, saw him doing the same calculation she was. Fighting now meant dying. Better to play along to survive long enough to find a real opportunity. She drank. The drug hit her system within minutes. Not unconsciousness, but a strange floating sensation like being wrapped in cotton. Her limbs felt heavy. Her thoughts slowed. But she remained aware, watching through a haze as the scions broke camp and prepared to move. They hauled her to her feet. Did the same with Darius, who fought the sedative with visible effort but ultimately succumbed to the same weighted sensation. "Perfect," Mira said. "Now we can travel without drama." The next hours blurred together. They moved through darkness lit by scion lights that shouldn't exist, through passages that twisted in non-Euclidean angles, deeper into whatever network Mira had mentioned. Kaelyn tried to track their route, to memorize landmarks, but the drug made everything slippery, and her mind kept losing the thread. At some point, Darius stumbled and fell. The scions kicked him until he rose. "Stop," Kaelyn slurred. "Leave him alone." "Then he needs to keep up." Mira's voice was emotionless. "We're on a schedule." They hauled Darius to his feet and kept moving. When Kaelyn woke, she was lying on stone in a different cave. Larger, warmer. Firelight danced across walls covered in symbols she was starting to recognize. Darius lay a few feet away, still unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. "Welcome to Waypoint 3, Mira said from somewhere behind her. 2 more nights of travel and we reach the collective compound. Think you can manage not to cause problems until then?" Kaelyn's head pounded. Her mouth tasted like copper and ashes. "Where are we?" "Deep in the unclaimed territories. Far from any pack that might attempt rescue. Far from anyone who'd hear you scream." Mira moved into view. "I'm going to be honest with you, Kaelyn. What comes next is going to hurt. We need to stress test your power, push you past your limits, see what you're actually capable of when survival is on the line. And we're going to use him," she gestured to Darius, "as motivation." Ice flooded Kaelyn's veins. "What does that mean?" "It means every time you fail a test, every time you refuse an order, every time you hold back, we hurt the Alpha. Not enough to kill him, just enough to make the lesson stick." Mira's smile was serene. "It's amazing how quickly people learn when someone they love is screaming." "You're insane." "I'm efficient. There's a difference." Mira crouched beside Darius's unconscious form. "He's impressive. I'll give him that. Stronger than most wolves, but strength means nothing against physics and leverage and people who've forgotten more about causing pain than he'll ever learn." "If you hurt him, you'll what? Explode? Lose control? Kill us all?" Mira laughed. "Go ahead. We're standing in a dampening field. This entire cave is designed to contain scion power. You could detonate yourself, and the worst that would happen is you'd give yourself a nosebleed." She stood. "So let's establish the new reality. You cooperate, you learn, you push past every limit we set, and he stays comfortable. You resist, you fight, you hold back even a little, and he suffers. Simple, clean, effective." Kaelyn felt her world narrow to a single point of crystalline horror. This was the trap. Not the threats, not the kidnapping, but this. Using Darius as a leash, a control mechanism, a way to force compliance through someone else's pain. "I hate you," she whispered. "That's fine. Hate is useful. Hate will make you strong." Mira pulled a knife from her belt, long, silver, designed to hurt wolves specifically. "Shall we begin your first lesson?" "No." Mira drove the blade into Darius's shoulder. He woke screaming. The sound tore through the cave, bounced off walls, echoed in Kaelyn's skull like physical impact. Darius thrashed, trying to get away from the pain, but the chains and the scions holding him prevented movement. "Stop!" Kaelyn lunged forward, but invisible force slammed her back against the wall. "Stop it, please. I'll do whatever you want." "I know you will." Mira twisted the knife.
Darius's scream rose higher. First lesson, Mira said calmly, speaking over his agony. Reach for your power. Find the center of it. Show me you can access it on command and I'll stop. Kaelyn's hands were shaking, her vision blurring with tears, but she reached for that well of energy that lived beneath her skin, that had saved her life a dozen times in the wild, that these monsters wanted to turn into a weapon. Nothing happened. The fear, the rage, the desperation, it all scattered her focus. She couldn't find the thread, couldn't grasp the power, couldn't do anything except kneel there uselessly while Darius screamed. Disappointing. Mira twisted the knife again. I'm trying. The words came out broken. I can't. The fear is, I don't know how. Then learn, fast. Mira's voice was patient. Fear is a tool. Use it, channel it. Let it feed the power instead of blocking it. Kaelyn closed her eyes, tried to breathe past the panic, tried to find that calm space where the power lived. Darius's screaming cut off abruptly as he lost consciousness. No, no, no! One of the scions slapped him awake. The screaming resumed. Something in Kaelyn broke, not shattered, transformed. The fear didn't disappear. It inverted, became fuel, became focus, became a white-hot point of absolute clarity that led her straight to the power's core. She grabbed it. Energy flooded through her system like lightning, like fire, like something wild and barely controlled. It wanted to explode outward, wanted to destroy everything, but she held it, shaped it, forced it into a coherent form. Her hands began to glow. Better. Mira pulled the knife free. Darius collapsed, gasping, blood pooling beneath his shoulder. First lesson complete, Mira said. See? You can do it when properly motivated. She wiped the blade clean. Rest now. In an hour, we do it again, and again, and again, until accessing your power becomes as natural as breathing. She walked away, leaving Kaelyn kneeling in the dark with power crackling around her fists and Darius's blood on the stone. Kaelyn crawled to him, her hands shaking as she pressed them against the wound. The power was still there, still surging through her, and on instinct she pushed it toward healing, toward helping instead of hurting. The bleeding slowed, not stopped, but slowed. Kaelyn, Darius's voice was barely a whisper. Don't give them what they want. I have to. They'll kill you. Let them. His eyes cracked open, glazed with pain. Don't become their weapon. You don't get to make that choice. Neither do you. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. Promise me. No matter what they do, you stay. You. Darius? Promise. She couldn't. The words stuck in her throat because she knew what was coming. Knew they'd torture him until she broke, until she gave them everything they wanted, until she became exactly what her father had envisioned. I can't, she whispered. Then I died. For nothing. The hour passed too quickly. Mira returned with 2 other scions, their expressions professionally neutral. Round 2. This time we're testing precision. I want you to move that rock, She pointed to a stone about the size of a fist, from the floor to that shelf without touching it. You have 5 minutes. Every minute you fail, the alpha loses a finger. That's insane. 4 minutes, 50 seconds. Sauce. Kaelyn stared at the rock, at the shelf, at Darius's hands where they lay chained and vulnerable. Stared at the future rushing toward her like a train she couldn't stop. She reached for the power. It came easier this time, more readily, like it had been waiting for the second summons. She shaped it into something like hands, like intention made manifest, and pushed it toward the rock. The stone wobbled, rolled slightly, didn't lift. 3 minutes. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She pushed harder, tried to remember how she'd moved things in the wild. But the pressure was different here. The stakes were different. The rock lifted an inch, dropped. 2 minutes. Kaelyn, Darius's voice was steady despite the pain he had to be in. Look at me. She did. You can do this. I know you can. Stop thinking. Just do. His faith in her was worse than the threats, because it meant something. Meant he believed she was strong enough for this, capable enough, powerful enough. Meant she couldn't fail him. Kaelyn stopped trying to control the power and just let it flow. The rock shot upward,
slammed into the shelf hard enough to crack it, and stayed there. 1 minute, 12 seconds. Mira sounded pleased. Good. Again, but this time with the larger stone. Same stakes, 5 minutes starting now. They drilled her for hours, lifting objects, moving water without touching it, creating barriers of solidified air, sensing living things through stone, each test harder than the last, each failure resulting in fresh pain for Darius, burns, cuts, broken bones that healed wrong because the scions refused to let them set properly. By the 4th hour, Kaelyn was moving things with barely a thought. By the 6th, she could sense every living creature within 100 yards. By the 8th, she'd created a shield strong enough to stop a knife thrown at her head. And Darius had stopped screaming, not because they'd stopped hurting him, because he'd reached some limit past which pain became white noise, where his consciousness floated in a place beyond suffering. Excellent progress, Mira said as dawnlight began filtering into the cave. 1 more test and we're done for today. No more. Kaelyn's voice was hoarse from hours of concentration. He can't take any more. He's stronger than you think. Wolves are remarkably resilient. Mira pulled out a small vial filled with liquid that glowed faintly. This is concentrated silver nitrate. Injected directly into a wolf's bloodstream, it causes system-wide failure. Death occurs in approximately 3 minutes, and it's unpleasant. She held up the vial. Your final test. Stop me from injecting this into your alpha. You have whatever time it takes me to cross this cave and reach him. Use your power. Stop me, or watch him die. Horror flooded through Kaelyn. You said you wouldn't kill him. I said we'd hurt him to motivate you. I never promised he'd survive. Mira started walking toward where Darius lay chained. Better hurry. Kaelyn grabbed for the power, felt it surge up like a tidal wave, and threw it at Mira with everything she had. The scion woman staggered, stopped, but didn't fall. Better, again. Kaelyn hit her with another wave, then another, throwing raw force like bludgeons, trying to knock her back, trying to stop her forward progress. Mira kept walking, 20 feet from Darius, 15, 10. Please, Kaelyn screamed. I'm trying. Try harder. She dug deeper, reached for reserves she didn't know she had, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. The power had been like a well, finite, requiring careful management. Now it felt like an ocean, endless, overwhelming, terrifying. She grabbed it and shaped it into a wall. Mira hit the barrier and finally stopped, unable to push through the solidified air that now separated her from Darius. Excellent, she said, genuine satisfaction in her voice. You found the deep reservoir, the real power beneath the surface tricks. She stepped back from the wall, tucked the vial away. Lesson complete. Rest now. Tonight we travel again. She walked away, leaving Kaelyn kneeling in exhaustion and Darius barely conscious, and the certain knowledge that this was only the beginning. As the scion settled into sleep, Kaelyn dragged herself to Darius's side. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her hands gentle on his ruined shoulder. I'm so sorry. Not your fault. I should never have agreed to this. Should have just let the power explode, taken us all out, ended it clean. No. He forced his eyes open. You're learning, getting stronger. That's good. Good? They're torturing you to turn me into a weapon. So use it. Learn everything. Get strong, enough to kill them all. His hand found hers, his grip weak but determined. Then burn this place to ash. The words settled into her chest like stones. He was right. They wanted her powerful. She'd become powerful. They wanted her trained. She'd learn every technique they had. They wanted a weapon. She'd become the sharpest blade they'd ever forged, and then she'd cut their throats with it. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. I'll become what they want. And then? Then we make them regret every second of this. Darius managed something that might have been a smile. That's my girl. The words shouldn't have warmed her, shouldn't have mattered, but they did. She stayed beside him while he slept, one hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and let herself imagine the moment when she'd make Mira and Aaron and every single scion in this organization understand exactly what they'd created. They wanted a monster. They'd get one. just not the one they expected. When darkness fell and the Scions woke to continue their journey, Kaelyn rose with a new clarity burning in her chest. She let them chain Darius again, let them prepare for travel, let them think she was broken and compliant. And when they moved deeper into the unclaimed territories toward whatever hell awaited at the collective compound, she memorized every landmark, every turn, every detail. Because someday, soon, she'd be walking this path in the opposite direction, and she'd be leaving nothing but corpses in her wake. The final waypoint was a structure that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Stone walls that curved organically, rooms that flowed into each other without clear boundaries, and at its center, a chamber that thrummed with so much power Kaelyn's teeth ached. The convergence chamber, Mira explained, where three ley lines intersect. Your father built the collective compound on one convergence. This is another, smaller, but still significant. She gestured to the center of the room where symbols had been carved directly into the bedrock. Stand there. Why? Because tomorrow we reach the compound and Aaron will want to test you himself. Better you understand what you're walking into. Mira's smile was sharp. Stand in the center. Let the convergence show you what you're meant to become. Every instinct screamed trap. But Kaelyn was done running from her own power. She walked to the center of the symbols and felt the energy hit her like a physical blow. It was everywhere. In the stone, in the air, in her own blood. Power beyond anything she'd touched before, ancient and patient and absolutely indifferent to human concepts of good or evil. It simply was. A force of nature waiting to be directed by anyone strong enough to grasp it. Kaelyn reached for it. The world exploded into sensation. She could feel everything, every living thing for miles, every shift in the Earth's crust, every molecule of air moving through the chamber. She could sense Darius's heartbeat, could feel the damage to his body in exquisite detail, could trace the pathways of pain like roads on a map. And she understood with devastating clarity that she could fix it. The power flowed through her into him, knitting torn tissue, setting broken bones, burning out the infection that had been festering in his shoulder wound. She felt his consciousness sharpen, felt him gasp as pain that had been constant for days suddenly vanished. Good, Mira said from somewhere very far away. Now you understand. Now you see what you're capable of when you stop fighting your nature. Kaelyn opened her eyes. The chamber was glowing, or she was glowing. The distinction felt irrelevant. This is your birthright, Mira continued. This is what your father saw in you before you were born. This is why he'll never stop hunting you, why he'll burn down every wolf territory on the continent if that's what it takes to bring you home. Her voice was gentle now, almost kind. You can fight it. You can pretend you're one of them. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not wolf. You're not human. You're something infinitely more. The power receded slowly, leaving Kaelyn shaking and empty. But Darius was healed. His breathing was steady. His injuries were gone. She'd done that. Rest, Mira said. Tomorrow we reach the compound. Tomorrow you meet your father. Tomorrow your real training begins. She left them alone in the convergence chamber, the symbols still glowing faintly in the darkness. Darius sat up slowly, testing his shoulder, his ribs, all the places that had been broken. You healed me. Yeah. How? I have no idea. Kaelyn's hands were still shaking. The power just knew what to do. Like it was waiting for me to ask. Kaelyn. He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. That was incredible. Terrifying, but incredible. That's what they want. They want me terrified of my own power so they can teach me to control it, to direct it, to use it the way they want. She met his gaze. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm angry. Good. Angry is useful. Angry is dangerous. Even better. His hand cupped her face. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever your father throws at you, remember who you are. Remember why we're doing this. We're doing this because you were stupid enough to get yourself captured trying to rescue me. Yeah, that too. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. But mainly because somewhere in the last few months, I stopped thinking about pack politics and power structures and started thinking about you. About us. About the fact that I'd rather die fighting for you than spend another day living with the memory of throwing you away. The words hit like physical impact. Darius, I love you. He said it simply, like stating a fact. I've loved you since the mate bond snapped into place. Maybe before. And I let fear and duty and everyone else's expectations convince me that love wasn't enough. His jaw tightened. I was wrong. Love is the only thing that matters. Everything else is just noise. Kaelyn felt tears track down her face. You can't say that now. Not here. Not when tomorrow we're walking into hell and we might not walk back out. Especially now. Especially here. He pulled her closer. Because if we don't survive this, I needed you to know. And if we do, I need you to understand that I'm not making the same mistake twice. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm not leaving. Not again. She kissed him. It was desperate and messy and tasted like blood and tears, and 3 months of grief crystallized into a single moment. His arms came around her, pulled her against him, and for just a few heartbeats the world narrowed to this, to them, to the connection that had survived rejection and exile and everything the universe had thrown at it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Darius rested his forehead against hers. We're going to survive this, he said. We're going to learn everything they have to teach. We're going to get strong enough that they can't hold us. And then we're going to burn their world down and build something better from the ashes. That's the plan? That's the plan. Kaelyn laughed, the sound broken but genuine. It's a terrible plan. You have a better one? No. Then terrible plan it is. He kissed her again, softer this time. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be. They came for her at dawn. 6 scions in formal robes marked with those spiral symbols, their faces professionally neutral as they entered the convergence chamber. Mira led them, her expression unreadable in the gray morning light. Time to meet your father, she said. Kaelyn rose slowly, every muscle in her body protesting. She'd slept maybe 2 hours, her mind too wired with plans and possibilities, and the memory of Darius's mouth on hers. Beside her, Darius stood with the controlled stillness of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Both of us? Kaelyn asked. Aaron wants to see what motivated you to cooperate so readily. He's curious about the alpha who chose exile with you over ruling his pack. Mira's smile was thin. Consider it an interview. They chained Darius again, lighter restraints this time, silver thread woven through leather that would burn if he shifted. He didn't resist, just met Kaelyn's eyes with a look that said trust the plan, even though they had no real plan beyond survive and learn and wait for an opening. The journey to the collective compound took 3 hours through forest that grew progressively wronger, trees that grew in spirals, streams that ran with water too thick to be natural, clearings where the grass grew in perfect geometric patterns. This was land shaped by scion power over centuries, molded and warped until it reflected the will of whoever controlled it. When they finally emerged from the tree line, Kaelyn's breath caught. The compound sprawled across a valley like something from a fever dream. Stone buildings that seemed to grow organically from the earth, walls covered in those spiral symbols pulsing with faint luminescence, and at the center, a structure that made her eyes hurt to look at directly. It was too many angles, too much presence, reality bending around it like light around a black hole. The heart, Mira said, following her gaze. Where the convergence is strongest, where Aaron built his vision. She glanced at Kaelyn, where you'll learn what you're truly capable of. They descended into the valley. Scions emerged from buildings to watch their procession, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all with that same too bright awareness in their eyes. Kaelyn could feel their attention like pressure against her skin, could sense them evaluating her, measuring her against some standard she didn't understand. A young woman stepped forward as they passed, her face alight with something like wonder. Is it true? Is she really Ashwood blood? Keep moving, Mira snapped. But Kaelyn had seen it. That look of reverence mixed with hunger. These people didn't just respect her bloodline. They worshipped it. The realization settled like ice in her stomach. The heart loomed closer with each step. Up close, Kaelyn could see it was carved from a single piece of black stone, obsidian or something darker, with symbols etched so deep they looked like wounds. The entrance was a mouth opened in a silent scream. Welcoming, Darius muttered. It's meant to intimidate, Mira said, to remind visitors that they're walking into a place of power they can't comprehend. She gestured them forward. Try not to embarrass yourselves. The interior was vast and impossibly tall,
the ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. The walls were covered in more symbols, these ones glowing with steady pulses that matched Kaelyn's heartbeat. At the far end, seated on a throne of twisted black stone, was Aaron Ashwood.
He looked exactly like the visions Mira had shown her, tall and sharp-featured with eyes that held that wrong light, that sense of power barely contained. But seeing him in person was different, overwhelming, like standing before a force of nature that could crush her without effort or thought. Kaelyn. His voice resonated through the chamber, through her bones, through the power that lived beneath her skin. My daughter, finally home. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she walked forward, her spine straight, her face carefully neutral. Darius moved with her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I'm not your daughter, Kaelyn said when they were close enough. Biology doesn't make family, doesn't it? Aaron's smile was gentle, almost paternal. You have my eyes, my power signature, my capacity for greatness. He stood, descending from the throne with movements that seemed to bend space. Whether you accept it or not, you're mine. You've always been mine. I belong to myself. Do you? He stopped a few feet away, his gaze tracking over her like she was a puzzle to solve. Mira tells me you've made remarkable progress, that in less than a week you've accessed depths of power that take most scions years to reach. His smile widened. That's the Ashwood blood, pure, undiluted. Exactly what I hoped for when I chose your mother. You didn't choose her, she ran from you. She ran from responsibility, from destiny, from the future I offered her. Aaron's expression hardened, and in doing so she nearly destroyed you, raised you among wolves like you were one of them, let you think you were defective when you were actually perfection. His hand reached out, hovering near her face. May I? Kaelyn wanted to refuse, wanted to spit in his face and tell him exactly what she thought of his vision and his destiny and his absolute certainty that power made right. But she needed information, needed to understand what she was facing before she could figure out how to destroy it. She nodded. Aaron's hand touched her temple and the world exploded. Not visions this time. Direct contact with his mind, his consciousness, the vast architecture of power and control he'd built over decades. She saw his plans, not just vague concepts, but detailed strategies for taking control of wolf territories one by one, for demonstrating science superiority through carefully orchestrated displays of overwhelming force, for reshaping the world into something that reflected his vision of natural order. She saw training grounds where young scions learned to kill without hesitation, saw prisons where captured wolves were used for experimentation, saw the systematic dismantling of every structure that didn't serve his purpose, and she saw herself at the center of it all. The living proof that scions were superior, the weapon that would break the last wolf resistance, the daughter who would validate everything he'd ever believed. The connection severed, and Kaelyn staggered backward, gasping. You're insane, she whispered. I'm visionary. There's a difference. Aaron's expression was patient. You see genocide, I see evolution. You see tyranny, I see necessary order. He gestured to the chamber around them. The world is chaos, Kaelyn. Competing species fighting over scraps, power distributed randomly to those who've done nothing to earn it. I'm simply correcting that imbalance. By enslaving wolves. By establishing proper hierarchy. Wolves had their chance to rule. They failed. Created territories and packs and all manner of structures that depend on brute force rather than intellect. Aaron moved closer, his voice dropping. We're better than that. Smarter. More capable. And with you as proof, pure scion bloodline surviving and thriving among wolves, we can show them the truth without violence. We can transition to the new order peacefully. And if they refuse, then they prove they're as inferior as I've always claimed, and we deal with them accordingly. His smile never wavered. But it won't come to that. You'll help me show them a better way. Kaelyn looked at this man who'd shaped her existence before she was born, who'd driven her mother into hiding, who'd built an entire ideology around the belief that some lives mattered more than others. And she understood with perfect clarity that he actually believed it. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. This was conviction. The absolute certainty that he was right and everyone who disagreed was simply too limited to understand, which made him infinitely more dangerous than a simple monster. What if I refuse? She asked quietly. Then we continue your training until you don't want to refuse anymore. Erin's tone was reasonable. I'm patient, Kaelyn. I've waited 18 years. I can wait 18 more if necessary. Eventually you'll see that I'm offering you freedom. Freedom from the limitations wolves impose, from their small-minded rules and restrictive hierarchies, from the constant need to prove yourself worthy of existence. By proving myself worthy to you instead, by recognizing your own worth independent of anyone's approval. He reached out again, this time his hand settling on her shoulder. You survived 3 months in the wild alone. You developed powers no one taught you. You came back stronger than anyone expected. That's not wolf resilience. That's scion excellence. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner we can— No! The word cut through his speech like a blade. Erin's expression flickered. Excuse me? I said no. To all of it. Your vision, your hierarchy, your absolute certainty that power makes right. Kaelyn pulled away from his hand. I've spent the last week watching your people torture someone I care about to force my compliance. I've seen your methods. I understand your philosophy, and I reject it completely. The temperature in the chamber dropped 10 degrees. You're making a mistake, Erin said quietly. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She looked at Darius, saw the pride and terror warring in his expression. You wanted to know what motivated me? It wasn't fear. It wasn't even survival. It was the understanding that love, real love, the kind that chooses someone even when it's hard, is stronger than any power you've accumulated. Love is weakness. Love is the only thing that isn't weakness. Everything else, power, control, dominance, that's all just fear dressed up as strength. Kaelyn felt the power rising in her, responding to her conviction. You're terrified, Erin. Terrified that maybe wolves aren't inferior. Terrified that maybe your entire worldview is built on lies. So you've constructed this elaborate justification for cruelty and called it vision. You know nothing about— I know you killed Marcus Rourke, a man who showed me more kindness in 8 years than you've shown anyone in your entire life. Killed him to punish my mother for the crime of wanting something different than what you offered. Her voice hardened. That's not vision. That's petty revenge. Erin's face had gone very still. Mira, take the Alpha to the lower chambers. I think my daughter and I need to have a more frank conversation. No. Kaelyn stepped in front of Darius. He stays. This concerns him too. He's a wolf. This is scion business. He's the man I love, which makes it his business. She held Erin's gaze. You want me to accept your worldview? Start by accepting mine. He matters. His pack matters. The life my mother built matters. Your approval doesn't. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Erin laughed, a genuine sound of surprised delight. There it is. The fire I was hoping for. The strength to stand against authority and defend your convictions. He smiled. You're magnificent, Kaelyn, even more than I imagined. I'm not doing this for your approval. I know. That's what makes it perfect. He moved back to his throne, settling into it with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his own power. You think you're rejecting me. You think you're choosing love over strength, wolves over scions, emotion over logic. But what you're actually doing is proving every point I've ever made about our superiority. Kaelyn's stomach dropped. What? No wolf would stand before me like this. No wolf would reject their birthright out of principle. No wolf has the strength of conviction to defend their beliefs against overwhelming opposition. Erin leaned forward. You're doing exactly what I'd hoped, demonstrating that scions can think independently, can question authority, can build moral frameworks beyond simple pack hierarchy. That's the future I'm trying to create. By forcing people into it, by showing them it's possible, by being living proof that there's a better way. His eyes gleamed. You can hate me, you can reject everything I stand for, but you can't reject what you are. And what you are, that strength, that conviction, that absolute refusal to back down, that's pure scion heritage. Kaelyn felt the trap closing. Because he was right. She was using the very traits he valued to argue against his philosophy, proving his point while trying to deny it. This is manipulation, Darius said quietly, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the chamber. Classic dominance behavior. Make her doubt her own convictions by pointing out she's using the tools you gave her. Aaron's attention shifted to him. The Alpha speaks. Tell me, Wolf, what gives you the right to interpret my daughter's choices? The fact that she asked me to stay. The fact that, unlike you, I've actually listened to what she wants instead of projecting my own desires onto her. Darius's voice was steady. You see a weapon. I see a person. That's the difference between us. You see a mate. That's biology, not choice. The mate bond is dead, has been for months. I'm choosing to be here, choosing to stand with her. Darius met Aaron's gaze without flinching. Can you say the same? That you chose to be her father? Or did you just see an opportunity and take it? The question hung in the air like a blade. Aaron studied Darius for a long moment. Then he smiled. I like him. He's got more spine than most wolves. Pity he's going to die when you realize keeping him alive serves no purpose. I'm not killing him, Kaelyn said. You won't have to. The training will. Or the first real combat situation. Or simple biology. Wolves live, 60 years? You'll live 3 times that if you develop your full potential. Aaron's tone was almost gentle. Love is beautiful, daughter, but it's also temporary. Power is forever. Power without purpose is just destruction. And love without power is just vulnerability. He stood again. Let me show you something. A demonstration of what I'm offering versus what you're clinging to. He gestured, and the walls of the chamber seemed to melt, replaced by images that played out like living memories. Kaelyn saw wolf territories torn apart by internal conflicts, saw alphas who'd grown old and weak being overthrown by younger challengers, saw packs fracturing under the weight of traditions that no longer served them. This is what you're defending, Aaron said, a system built on violence and age and the constant struggle for dominance. Is that really better than what I'm proposing? Stability through strength, order through demonstrated capability? What you're proposing is tyranny with better marketing, Kaelyn shot back. You want to replace one hierarchy with another and call it progress. I want to replace a failed system with one that actually works. For who? For scions? What about everyone else? What about wolves who can't access your precious power? What about humans? What about anyone who doesn't fit your definition of worthy? Her voice rose. You're not creating a better world. You're creating the same world with different people on top. Because those people are objectively superior. No one is objectively superior. That's the whole point. Kaelyn felt the power surging through her now, responding to her fury. Power doesn't make you better. It just makes you capable of more damage. And every system that's ever been built on the idea that some people matter more than others has collapsed into horror. Aaron's expression hardened. You're naive. Young. You haven't seen enough of the world to understand. I've seen enough to know that hurting people to prove a point is wrong. I've seen enough to know that real strength is protecting the vulnerable, not dominating them. I've seen enough to know that you're not visionary. You're terrified. She took a step forward. Terrified that maybe you're wrong. Terrified that maybe power isn't enough. Terrified that when you die, everything you've built will crumble because it was never built on anything real. The chamber went absolutely silent. When Aaron spoke again, his voice was cold. You've made your position clear. Now let me make mine equally clear. You can choose to join me, to help build the future, to be the bridge between scions and wolves that makes the transition peaceful. Or you can choose to fight me, to cling to a dying system, to watch everyone you care about suffer because of your stubbornness. That's not a choice. That's a threat. It's reality. The collective is happening whether you participate or not. The only question is how many people die in the process. His eyes held hers. Help me, and we can minimize casualties. Fight me, and I'll burn every wolf territory on this continent to prove my point. The choice is yours. Kaelyn felt the weight of it, the impossible decision between complicity and watching the world burn, between becoming what she hated and letting everyone she cared about pay the price for her principles. It was the same choice Darius had faced 3 months ago, the same impossible calculation between duty and desire, between the greater good and personal morality. And she understood with sudden clarity what her answer had to be. No, she said. No to which option? No to the premise. You don't get to make this my choice. You're the one threatening violence. You're the one building weapons. You're the one who's decided that your vision matters more than anyone else's freedom. She felt power crackling around her hands. So here's my choice. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to learn everything you're willing to teach me, and then I'm going to use it to tear down everything you've built. Aaron's smile was sad. Then you've chosen war. You chose war the moment you decided other people's lives were worth less than your ideology. I'm just refusing to be your justification for it. For a long moment, they stood there, father and daughter, scion and scion, two people with the same power and completely opposite convictions. Then Aaron raised his hand. Mira, take her to the deep training chambers, full program, no restraints. If she wants to be strong enough to challenge me, let's see if she can survive the process. Aaron, Mira's voice held a note of uncertainty. She made her choice. Now she lives with the consequences. His eyes never left Kaelyn's face. You want to fight me, daughter? Prove you're strong enough to try. Scions moved from the shadows surrounding Kaelyn and Darius. More than before, 20, maybe 30, all with that same deadly competence. Last chance to reconsider, Aaron said. Kaelyn looked at Darius, saw him nod slightly, saw the trust and terror and absolute commitment in his expression. She looked back at her father. See you on the other side. Then she grabbed the power and let it explode. The chamber erupted into chaos. Kaelyn's energy wave sent scions flying, shattered stone, made the air itself scream. She didn't try to control it, didn't try to shape it, just let it pour out of her like water through a broken dam. Run! She screamed at Darius. He was already moving, his shift flowing over him as the silver chains burned and broke. His wolf form hit the nearest exit at full speed, smashing through the door and disappearing into the compound beyond. Kaelyn held the power for as long as she could, buying him seconds, maybe minutes to get away. Then hands grabbed her, Mira and others, their combined strength overwhelming even her enhanced state. Stupid, Mira hissed in her ear. Heroic, but stupid. They dragged her down, pressed her face first into the stone floor. Kaelyn felt restraint snap around her wrists. Not silver this time, but something else. Something that burned cold and seemed to drink the power directly from her veins. Scion-forged binding, Mira explained. The more you fight, the more it drains you. Relax, and you can keep about 10% capacity. Struggle, and you'll empty yourself completely. Kaelyn forced herself to go still, felt the terrible draining pressure ease slightly. Where's Aaron? She gasped. Safe. Did you really think a tantrum would hurt him? Mira hauled her upright. You wanted the deep training? Congratulations. You just earned it. They dragged her through corridors that seemed to shift and twist, downstairs that shouldn't exist, into depths where the stone itself pulsed with accumulated power. The binding around her wrists grew colder with each level, sapping her strength, making every movement feel like dragging herself through mud. Finally, they reached a chamber that made the convergence point look like a candle next to a bonfire. Power saturated everything. The walls, the air, the very atoms seemed to vibrate with barely contained force. The deep chamber, Mira said, shoving Kaelyn into the center, where we break scions who think they're stronger than they are and rebuild them into something useful. She stepped back. You wanted to learn everything we could teach? Here's lesson 1. Power without control is just suicide with extra steps. She made a gesture and the chamber activated. Energy flooded into Kaelyn from every direction, not her own power, but external force being pushed into her system faster than she could process it. It felt like drowning in lightning, like her veins were filling with liquid fire, like every cell in her body was being simultaneously crushed and expanded. She screamed. That's the sound of potential meeting reality, Mira said dispassionately. Every scion who's gone through deep training has made that sound. Most of them survive. Some don't. Let's see which category you fall into. The pressure increased. Kaelyn's vision went white. Her power tried to rise in defense, but the binding drained it away as fast as it formed. She was being force-fed energy she couldn't use, couldn't release, couldn't do anything except endure. Time lost meaning. Seconds or hours or days, she couldn't tell. There was only the pain and the power and the slowly building understanding that this was designed to break her, to tear down every defense she'd built, to reduce her to nothing so they could rebuild her according to their specifications. She thought of Darius, hoped he'd made it out, hoped he was running far and fast and would never look back. She thought of her mother,
Wondered if Lyra had known this would happen, if she'd tried to spare her daughter this specific hell. She thought of Marcus Rourke, the man who'd claimed her as his daughter knowing what she was, who'd shown her that family was choice rather than biology. And she held on. Not because she was strong enough, not because she had some reserve of power they couldn't touch, but because giving up meant letting Aaron win, meant accepting that his vision was inevitable, meant becoming exactly what he'd wanted her to be, a weapon without will, a tool that served his purpose. She'd rather die. The realization brought a strange calm. If death was the alternative to compliance, then death was acceptable. She could let go, could stop fighting the pressure and just let it tear her apart. At least then she'd die as herself. The moment she stopped resisting, something shifted. The power that had been crushing her suddenly cooperated. Instead of fighting her system, it began flowing through established channels, finding pathways she hadn't known existed, settling into a pattern that felt almost natural. The pain didn't stop, but it changed quality, from torture to intensity, from something unbearable to something merely excruciating. Kaelyn opened her eyes. The chamber was glowing, or she was glowing. Hard to tell. Mira stood at the edge of the circle, her expression shocked. "How are you still conscious?" Spite. The word came out rough. And stubbornness, and the absolute refusal to give your psychopath boss what he wants. "You should be broken by now, shattered. We've pumped enough power through you to kill 3 normal scions. Then I guess I'm not normal." "No." Mira's voice held something like awe. "You're really not." She made another gesture, and the power flow cut off abruptly. Kaelyn collapsed, her body shaking, every nerve ending screaming, but she was alive, conscious, still herself. "Aaron needs to see this," Mira muttered. She hauled Kaelyn upright, supporting her weight as they moved back toward the stairs. "You just survived the deep training that kills half the scions who attempt it, and you did it in 1 session. Lucky me." "Luck has nothing to do with it. That was pure bloodline strength." Mira's grip tightened. "You're exactly what Aaron said you were. The strongest scion born in generations. With proper training, I could destroy you all," Kaelyn finished. "That's what I could do. That's what I'm going to do. Keep telling yourself that." They emerged into the main compound to find it in chaos. Smoke rose from multiple buildings. Scions ran in organized patterns, clearly responding to some emergency. And from somewhere distant came the sound of howling, dozens of wolves, maybe hundreds, getting closer. Mira's face went pale. "No, they couldn't have tracked me?" Kaelyn smiled despite the pain. "You dragged us through 3 waypoints across unclaimed territory. You think Darius wasn't leaving markers the whole time? You think my mother hasn't spent the last week gathering every wolf who owed her a favor? It's suicide. We have hundreds of trained scions. And they have thousands of wolves who are really, really pissed off that you kidnapped 2 of their own." The howling grew louder. Mira's expression hardened. "You planned this. The defiance, the tantrum in the throne room. It was all to buy him time to escape and signal his pack. I planned to not become my father's weapon. The rest was improvisation." Kaelyn's smile widened. "But yeah, Darius running was definitely part of the hope. Aaron will kill them all. He'll try. Question is whether your people are actually willing to die for his vision when they're staring down a few thousand angry wolves." Kaelyn met her eyes. "Because that's the thing about tyranny. It only works when people are too afraid to fight back, and fear stops working the moment someone refuses to be afraid anymore." An explosion rocked the compound. Then another. The wolves weren't just attacking, they were using strategy, targeting key structures, creating chaos. "Release me," Kaelyn said. "Let me help end this before everyone dies." "Why would I trust you?" "Because the alternative is watching this place burn with you in it. Because somewhere under all that loyalty to Aaron is a person who chose this life for reasons that made sense at the time. Because everyone deserves a chance to choose differently." Mira stared at her for a long moment. Then, unbelievably, she reached for the binding around Kaelyn's wrists. "You try to run, I kill you myself," she said. "Deal." The binding fell away and power rushed back into Kaelyn's system like a flood. She gasped, staggered, forced herself to stay upright despite the sudden overwhelming sensation of being whole again. "Where's Aaron?" she asked. "The heart."
He's preparing a working to deal with the wolves. Something large. Mira's expression was grim. Something that'll probably kill thousands. Can I stop it? I don't know, maybe, if you're actually as strong as the deep training suggests. Mira gestured toward the massive central structure. But you'll have to go through his personal guard, and they're all combat-trained scions who won't hesitate to kill you. Then I guess we'll see if genetics beats training. Kaelyn started walking toward the heart, her body still shaking but her mind crystalline clear. Behind her, she heard Mira make a decision. I'm coming with you, Mira said. Why? Because I've been watching Aaron build this compound for 20 years. Watching him gather scions and twist their pain into loyalty and convince them that power justified anything. And maybe I'm tired of watching. Maybe I want to see if there's actually another way. Mira fell into step beside her. Or maybe I just want to be there when you fail so I can say I told you so. Honesty, I appreciate that. They ran through the burning compound, dodging scions and wolves locked in brutal combat. Kaelyn saw faces she recognized from the pack. Warriors who'd watched her exile, council members who'd stayed silent, people who'd apparently decided that retrieving her was worth fighting an army of scions. She saw her mother directing a group of wolves toward a breach in the compound wall, saw Lyra's face light up when their eyes met across the chaos. Go! Lyra screamed. Stop Aaron! We'll handle this! Kaelyn nodded and kept running. The entrance to the heart stood open, its guards already engaged with wolves who'd pushed this deep. Kaelyn and Mira slipped through the chaos and into the structure's twisting corridors. The power here was overwhelming, thick enough to taste, old enough to make her bones ache. This was where Aaron had focused everything, where he'd built the center of his vision. They reached the throne room to find it transformed. The walls had been torn down, the ceiling open to the sky. In the center, Aaron stood within a circle of glowing symbols, his hands raised, power streaming from him in visible waves. Around him, reality itself seemed to bend and fracture. He's opening a rift, Mira breathed, planning to dump the wolves into a pocket dimension where they'll be trapped forever. Can he do that? With enough power and preparation? Yes, and he's had both. Kaelyn stepped forward. Aaron? Her father's eyes snapped open. Daughter, come to watch me end this foolish rebellion? Come to stop you. You can't. His voice was serene. The working is already active. In 30 seconds, every wolf within a mile will be pulled through the rift. They'll spend eternity lost in the spaces between worlds, a fitting punishment for their arrogance. They're not arrogant. They're defending their own against someone who tried to steal one of them. They're defending a broken system. I'm offering evolution. Aaron's power built higher, the air beginning to tear. You could stand with me, Kaelyn. Together, we could reshape everything. Build a world where power serves purpose, where the strong protect instead of dominate, where you can't build that world through mass murder. I'm not murdering them. I'm removing them from the equation. They'll be alive, just elsewhere. His smile was terrible. Now stand aside or be pulled through with them. 20 seconds. Kaelyn reached for her power, felt it surge in response. Stronger than before the deep training, more controlled, absolutely furious. She pushed it toward Aaron's working, trying to disrupt the patterns he'd created. His defenses were absolute. The power slid off like water off stone. 15 seconds. You're not strong enough, Aaron said gently. Not yet. Give it a few years, come back when you've trained, and maybe then you could challenge me. But now, you're a child playing with forces you don't understand. 10 seconds. The rift was opening, a tear in reality that screamed with unsound, that pulled at everything nearby with hunger that had no bottom. Kaelyn felt it dragging at her, felt her feet starting to slide toward the opening. She looked at Mira, saw the other woman bracing herself against a pillar, knew there was no help coming from that direction. She looked at the rift, at the working Aaron had created, at the complex web of power holding it stable, and she understood what she had to do. 5 seconds. You're right, Kaelyn said. I'm not strong enough to stop you. Then stand aside. But I'm strong enough to destabilize what you've built. She grabbed the power and shoved it directly into the rift's framework, not trying to close it, trying to break it. The working shattered. The rift, suddenly uncontrolled, exploded outward in a wave of force that would have torn Kaelyn apart if Mira hadn't grabbed her and pulled her behind the pillar. Aaron wasn't so lucky. He was standing at ground zero when his own working reversed on him. The rift that was supposed to trap wolves instead caught its creator, pulling him toward the tear in reality with irresistible force. "Kaelyn!" His voice held genuine fear for the first time. "Help me!" She stepped out from behind the pillar, looked at the man who'd shaped her existence, who'd tormented her mother, who'd built an empire on the certainty that some lives mattered less than others. "No," she said. Aaron Ashwood fell into the rift screaming, the tear sealed behind him with a sound like reality breathing out. Then silence. Kaelyn stood in the ruins of the heart, shaking, covered in blood and ash, and felt something that might have been grief or relief, or just exhaustion beyond measure. "You killed him," Mira said quietly. "He killed himself. I just refused to save him from his own hubris. The collective will fall apart without him. Everything he built, everyone who believed in his vision, it's all going to collapse. Good. Let it collapse. Let them figure out who they are without someone telling them power makes them superior." Kaelyn turned to face Mira. "What about you? What will you do?" Mira was silent for a long moment, then, "I don't know. For 20 years I've followed Aaron's vision because it made sense. Because I was angry, and he gave me direction for that anger. Now he's gone, and I'm just empty." "Then fill yourself with something better. Help the scions who remain find a different path. Build something that doesn't require victims to function." "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's necessary." Kaelyn held out her hand. "Help me." Mira looked at the offered hand like it was a foreign object. Then, slowly, she took it. "One condition," Mira said. "You tell the truth about what happened here. About Aaron, about the collective, about what scions are capable of when they stop believing power makes right. You owe us that much." "Deal." They walked out of the heart together, emerging into a compound where the fighting had stopped. Wolves and scions stood in wary clusters, weapons lowered but not sheathed, waiting for someone to tell them what came next. Kaelyn found Darius in the center of the main courtyard, his wolf form battered but whole, surrounded by pack warriors. When he saw her, he shifted back to human and crossed the distance in 3 strides. He pulled her into his arms without a word, his face buried in her hair, his entire body shaking with relief. "You're okay," he said, the words muffled. "I'm alive. There's a difference. I'll take it." He pulled back enough to look at her face. "Aaron?" "Gone." The rift took him. Something complicated crossed Darius's expression. Not quite relief, not quite grief, but something in between. And the rest of them? Leaderless, confused, probably going to spend the next year figuring out what the hell they believe in now that their Messiah is gone. She looked around at the assembled scions and wolves. "We need to talk. All of us. Figure out what comes next." "Agreed." Darius's hand found hers. "But first, your mother is going to want to see you. She's been losing her mind." Lyra was exactly where Kaelyn expected, directing cleanup efforts, organizing the wounded, being the steady presence she'd always been. When she saw Kaelyn, she froze. Then she was moving, pulling Kaelyn into an embrace that felt like it could crush bones. "I'm so sorry," Lyra said, the words tumbling out. "For lying, for hiding, for not preparing you better. I thought I was protecting you, but I just made everything harder." "Just say—" "Mom." Kaelyn pulled back enough to meet her mother's eyes. "I forgive you for all of it. You did what you thought was right with the information you had. That's all anyone can do." Lyra's face crumpled. "I don't deserve—" "Maybe not. But you're getting it anyway, because holding on to anger doesn't serve anyone, and I'm tired of letting the past control the future." She squeezed her mother's hands. "Besides, I'm going to need help figuring out what to do with an entire compound full of scions who just lost their leadership. You know these people. Help me help them." "You're really staying?" Lyra asked. "For a while. Long enough to make sure this place doesn't immediately collapse into violence or tyranny version 2. Long enough to see if scions and wolves can actually coexist without trying to kill each other." Kaelyn glanced at Darius. "Then we'll see." The negotiations took 3 days. Scions who'd dedicated their lives to Aaron's vision struggled to reconcile his loss with their own beliefs. Wolves who'd come expecting war found themselves in peace talks instead, and in the center of it all, Kaelyn stood as bridge, scion by blood, raised by wolves, belonging fully to neither and therefore able to speak to both. They established terms. The collective compound would remain, but open. No more secrecy, no more kidnapping, no more experiments. Scions who wanted to leave could. Those who wanted to stay would work with wolf representatives to establish communication, to trade knowledge, to build something new. It wasn't perfect. There were fights and setbacks and moments when the whole thing threatened to collapse. But slowly, grudgingly, both sides began to see each other as people rather than threats. On the fourth day, Kaelyn stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, watching the sun set over a compound that no longer felt like a prison. Darius found her there, settling beside her with the comfortable silence of someone who knew when words weren't necessary. "Thinking about leaving?" he asked eventually. "Thinking about what comes next. For all of us." She leaned into his shoulder. "I'm not what I thought I was. Not wolf, not entirely scion, something in between that doesn't have a name yet." "Does it need a name?" "Probably not. But people like categories, like knowing where things fit. Then make a new category." Darius's arm came around her shoulders. "You've already rewritten the rules on everything else. What's one more?" Kaelyn thought about that. About the girl who'd knelt in the dirt 3 months ago, convinced she was broken. About the woman who'd survived the wild and returned stronger. About the future that stretched ahead, uncertain, complicated, but hers to shape. "What about you?" she asked. "Your pack needs you. They came when you called, followed you into hell, and now you're here playing diplomat instead of leading them. They have Lyra and the council. They'll survive." He tilted her face toward his. "Besides, where you go, I go. That's the deal." "That's a terrible deal for you. Best one I've ever made." He kissed her softly. "I rejected you once because I thought duty mattered more than love. I was wrong. Nothing matters more than this, than you, than us." "Darius, let me finish. I know I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did. I know saying sorry doesn't erase the pain. But I need you to know every choice I make from here on is with you. For you. Because you're not just my mate or my mission or my redemption. You're the person I choose to stand with every single day for however long we have." Tears tracked down Kaelyn's face. "You're an idiot. Established. Moving on." He wiped the tears away with his thumb. "What do you say? Want to build a future with a reformed asshole who's still figuring out how to be worthy of you? Only if you stop talking like you have something to prove. You're already worthy." She kissed him back, harder this time. "And yes, to all of it. To building something new. To figuring it out together. To whatever comes next." They sat there as the sun disappeared and the stars emerged. Two people who'd been broken and had chosen to heal. Who'd been rejected and had chosen to return. Who'd been told they couldn't exist together and had proven everyone wrong. Below them, in the compound, scions and wolves were sharing a meal, tentatively, awkwardly, but genuinely trying. Kaelyn could see her mother in the midst of it, mediating disputes, telling stories, being the bridge she'd always been, and she felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, that would take time, but possibility. The sense that maybe the future didn't have to be defined by the past failures. Maybe they could build something better. Darius's hand tightened around hers. "Whatever happens, we face it together." "Together," Kaelyn agreed. And under the stars that had watched her exile and her return, her breaking and her remaking, Kaelyn Rourke chose to believe in tomorrow. Not because it was guaranteed to be better, but because she was strong enough now to make it so. The girl who'd had no wolf had become something infinitely more dangerous. A woman who knew her own worth, who'd faced her demons and survived, who understood that real power wasn't about domination or hierarchy or proving superiority. Real power was choosing love when fear was easier, choosing compassion when cruelty would be simpler, choosing to build instead of destroy, even when destruction felt deserved. She'd been cast out, discarded, forgotten. She'd survived. And now the world that once denied her would have to contend with what she'd become. Not despite the rejection, but because of it. She wasn't the weapon her father wanted. She wasn't the failure the pack had labeled her. She was herself. complicated, powerful, flawed, and free. And that was more than enough.